Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. Today is Tuesday, August 26, 2025. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back to all of you. Yes, the Jaybefaunt channel is also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. So you can find me there on Thursdays for the Savvy and JB show and then Sundays for the JB show. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and give a like to the stream. This helps me out to be able to reach more people so that we may be able to inform, inspire, and encourage and activate. So thank you very much for that. If you guys have not already, you guys can also subscribe to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com. So you guys can get email notifications whenever I write any articles, upload clips, or go live just like this. Also, if you guys have any questions you guys would like to submit and you guys want me to do a video response or a reaction to a video that you may have saw, you guys can do that through QBouncy at qbouncy.com/Jaybefaunt. So you guys have that there. So a blanket hello to everybody that's watching all across the platforms on YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, and Kick. Good to see all of you guys joining me today. We're going to have a wonderful show. Let's take a look at that thumbnail so that we can get started on today's show. So we have 3 topics that we discuss as always. Let's get into it. So later in the show today, we're going to be discussing private equity and why private equity spells doom for so many of us, especially within the Imperial Core. So we're going to be talking about the dangers and pitfalls of private equity. And this is one of the banes of capitalism, pun intended and not pun intended, that is the why we need to transfer into a brand new system. So we're going to be getting into that. Also, towards the middle of the show, we're going to be talking about how DeSantis is Israel first. We got to get into it because there's some shenanigans afoot with people like Ron DeSantis and his dealings with the state of Israel. So we're going to be getting into that as well. But first, we're going to be getting into our first guest. Our first guest was also featured on Revolutionary Blackout Network, but we have him here. So glad to have him for the first time on this channel. He is with the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We have with us joining Mr. Shaquille Sunflower. Good to see him and have him on the show. We're going to be talking to him about all things what's going on in the United States. And my question to him is America cooked? Welcome to the channel.
It's definitely in the pot. I wouldn't say it's fully cooked in the moment at the moment. Before we go any further, peace and love to comrades near and far. Appreciate y'all tuning in just to hear this conversation between me and JB. More importantly, appreciation to JB for having me once again. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, it is a crap storm, to say the least, in the moment at the moment. And I think that whoever is in his cabinet was able to talk him down from whatever he was about to go in. He, meaning Donald Trump. I hate even uttering the name Trump because he's such a piece of garbage. But yeah, whoever is in his cabinet was like, oh, you can't do this because this is the ramifications of you having done so. And showed him actual data and showed him what the consequences of his dealings are, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the consequences of his dealings are really just blowing back on all of us. And a lot of people are also saying how they're really seeing how similar to Biden Donald Trump really is. And this really proves the point to that a lot of us have been making, that really it's not 2 separate parties. It's really one uniparty. Would you like to expand on that just a little bit?
Yeah, they're definitely unified in their approach to just how they would handle foreign affairs. Nothing gets passed through without consent from both parties involved. The problem with neoliberalism or neoliberals in general is that they know what's up, but because they got their piece, because they're secure in housing and just their basic necessities, they'll come back and tell everyday working class people, hey, we know it's messed up. We're attempting to do this versus that. No, they're not, because they also had high military budgets which took away from public funding. They also had ill dealings with China and amongst other countries. The Biden administration, even though going back to the Obama administration, which I constantly bring up just because so many of our people romanticize Obama, without knowing, all money ain't good money, just like all skin folk ain't kinfolk. Everybody don't have your best interests at heart. And, just because somebody speaks the language, just because somebody can understand the language that you're speaking to them, doesn't mean that they're not backdooring you, doesn't mean that they're not cutting deals that operate totally against you. And this is, by far and large, what every single last U.S. president has done. Their attachment is to moneyed interest. Their attachment is to capitalism. How the system came about is how it is maintained, and is how it will continue on, as far as that particular aspect of it is concerned.
So one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on is one of the things that has sparked my interest in in having you on is you have a great analysis of the Imperial Core from a more people-centered, human-centered perspective instead of a capital-centered perspective, which I appreciate. There's some people who are in the MAGA sphere that are getting upset with Trump. So, of course, one of the first things that upset them was the fact that Donald Trump decided that he was going to escalate militarily with Iran. That was one big thing. A lot of people in MAGA said we do not want any more foreign wars, and yet this is what's happening. Then the next big thing that happened was really the Epstein files. And if I miss anything, please feel free to fill in. But the Epstein files now, how they basically did this hoopla about how they were going to go after the Epstein files and reveal everything they can in the Epstein files. But then once they looked at the Epstein files, then they kind of reneged on it. And they were like, there's really nothing there. When in reality, they were saying there was a there, which many of us, including myself, believe there actually is a there. But the there that's there shows that is their guy in there. It's a say it in a colloquial way. But also now we have this story that really is getting some people in MAGA world up in arms now, and it involves China. So let's take a look at what Donald Trump says here, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
President Xi would like me to come to China. It's a very important relationship. As you know, we're taking a lot of money in from China because of the tariffs and the different things, and it's a very important relationship. We're going to get along good with China. I hear so many stories about we're not going to allow their students, or we're going to allow their students to come in. We're going to allow. It's very important. 600,000 students. It's very important. But we're going to get along with China. But it's a different relationship that we have now with China. It's a much better relationship economically than it was before. With Biden, boy, what he allowed they just took him to the cleaners. President.
Your initial thoughts about what was just said by President Trump.
I went back for context, as difficult as it was to listen to this fool. I went back for context and, just listened to the whole thing, which was I think a 4 or 5 minute clip that I had watched. And my thought process is he's posturing. He's not in a position of power the way that he presents himself to be. The U.S. is beholden to China. The U.S. imports more from China than it exports to China. This is just a matter of actual fact. When we look around at just our everyday items, we could look from pharmaceutical goods such as ibuprofen. We could look at electronics. We can look at, there's a wide array of things, including, and because this is something that gets brought up, just because the U.S. itself cannot exist without constant war. I've been around for almost 4 decades, and the U.S. has been in a war in every single last one of them. And here's the reality of it. One of the key elements that goes into weapons, that goes into the ammo, like in guns and stuff like that, is produced by China. So if they cut off supplies, there are so many economic and just political consequences, which is why he's now kind of just watering down the stance that he had originally. You can go back to like 2015 and see some of the things that he stated about China's relationship to the United States before his first term, before that first mistake was made. And now we're here, and it's like, yo, you can't do this because here's what this is going to do to the economy. Let me just put it in layman terms. It's going to crash the economy for sure. Like economists were already talking about how there's a possible recession. If Trump don't get out this hot water that he's in with China, if he don't walk it back, we're all going to be in some deep shit. Black people in particular, and kind of just analyzing that situation momentarily. But the things that he's talking about as far as these tariffs are concerned would do more to harm the U.S., would do more to harm the citizens of the U.S., would do more to harm working class people than it would do to China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things that I learned, my comrade Sabi Sab, she actually used to be an academic advisor. One of the things that she taught us was that a lot of these foreign students, one of the things that they are able to do is basically pay tuition in full when they come here. So that means that there are millions upon really billions of dollars in endowments that are in these institutions, especially a lot of the private universities, especially like the Ivy Leagues. And so that, in turn means that college is really just a business. And so therefore, Donald Trump is one of those people who looks out for business interests. This also includes colleges too. He may bluster a lot about what some of these Ivy Leagues are doing, but you also got to remember Donald Trump is an Ivy League alum as well. And so when it comes to a lot of these foreign students, it's not only that they can pay their tuition in full, but also another thing that is pressing that a lot of people don't think about is these students that come here. And I'm not just talking about China, I'm talking about all over the United States. They will come, they will learn, and then a lot of them, especially from China, go back home. They don't stay because they see economically that the United States is going down. Because the United States is going down and China's coming up, guess where they're going to go? They're going to go where it's going up. So they're going to go back home. So they're going to learn what they can learn here and then go home. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, that is an absolute fact. And like you stated, college is really just a business, or it runs itself like a business, especially when you look and see how many people are in student loan debt. But the messed up part is that you're conditioned from young to learn, hey, you go to school, you get a good job. What happens when you go to school? Do everything that that you program to do, essentially. And then you get out and there is no job, or you get out and you're underemployed, which you don't have enough money to pay back those student loans. As far as that aspect of it is concerned, like you said, people come from other countries, pay for their education in full. And part of the issue is nobody ever questions, well, how come they can do this and we can't do this here? And we're the ones that are being fed the propaganda from, the time you can understand what you're saying on the TV screen on throughout the course of your life. The propaganda is pro-US, but the US is not pro-people. The U.S. is not pro-its citizenry because and you can look at the White House government website. You have to believe what it is that I'm saying and just see all of what the U.S. has actually cut that would make it to where people can maintain just the basic necessities. The U.S. has this history of putting its citizens in peril.
Absolutely. One of the things that I also wanted to shift gears a little bit too, because one of the things that Donald Trump is doing is, and it feels very performative. It feels performative, but at the same time, it feels tangible, but for the parasite class. And I want to share this as well. This recently happened late last week, so I want to get into this. And I actually went on Kit Cabello's show, Heartlands Media, to discuss this particular subject too. Donald Trump speaking about Chicago and what he would like to do. Let's get into this as well.
We have to. And after we do this, we'll go to another location and we'll make it safe also. We're going to make our country very safe. We're going to make our cities very, very safe. Chicago's a mess. You have an incompetent mayor, grossly incompetent. And we'll straighten that one out probably next. That'll be our next one after this. And it won't even be tough. And the people in Chicago, Mr. Vice President, are screaming for us to come. They're wearing red hats, just like this one, but they're wearing red hats. African-American ladies, beautiful ladies, are saying, please, President Trump, come to Chicago. Please. I did great with the black vote, as you know, and they want something to happen. So I think Chicago will be our next, and then we'll help with New York, and we're going to help with, and I think a lot of these people that you see on television, they're including the people in this audience. They'll say bad things about me, and then they'll say, thank God he's here, because half of them got mugged.
So your initial thoughts about what Donald Trump has stated in regards to sending the National Guard to Chicago?
What I would do is I would tell people to examine the types of cities or the types of spaces in which he's sending the National Guard or deploying the National Guard, even in D.C. You know, when you grow up and you look at D.C., it's like, damn, the White House is right there. It shows it with prestige, but people don't look behind the curtain. People don't look behind the White House and see that, D.C. is deeply impoverished. When you got like 14%, I think it's 14% for D.C., 17% for Chicago, just to go back to Chicago, which both are above the national average. And DC and Chicago, I would warn, are the litmus test. DC and Chicago are experimental to see how far he can take these things. I won't be surprised once it hits my home city of New York. I won't be surprised once it hits LA, which is in close proximity to where I'm at now. My thoughts in regard to what he's saying is he's saying a bunch of nothing. Anybody that's sitting up there and is just, very this, very that, without explaining what the hell it is that they're talking about. Anybody else that wasn't sitting in his position, most people would just be like, okay, we're not having this conversation because you're not saying anything. You're not elaborating on, how dangerous the situation is, which is all bullshit. Because if you look at the actual numbers, Chicago is down historically almost across the board as far as crime is concerned. But when you look at the White House website, what they would tell you is the reason why they would be deploying the National Guard to Chicago is because of all of the criminal statistics that are down. Example, homicides are down 33%, anywhere between 33 and 35%, I believe. And then it is shootings are down 38%. Overall violent crime in Chicago is down about 21 to 22%. So when the government is telling you we're deploying the National Guard or we're deploying any type of military in order to be able to handle a situation that doesn't exist, we need to collectively do better about examining what it is they're saying they're going to do, because all of that money that's being poured into militarizing Chicago, into DC, so much could be going into public funding. So that way people do have what it is that they need. So that way people aren't having insecurity about whether or not they could afford groceries or whether or not their kid is going to go to an educational system that is going to be fit for them to actually learn.
Let me ask you this. Could this also be, and maybe I'm wearing my tinfoil hat here, but could this be a ploy to get people up in arms so that it gives the police and National Guard a means to arrest more people, just so that they can have more of an excuse not only to increase police budgets, but also to incarcerate more people, because we know that the goal is to either keep people under wage slavery or put them back within chattel slavery, because we know the 13th Amendment still allows for chattel slavery if you're duly convicted. So is this more of a ploy to get more people either to be, if they can't be wage slaves, then we can get them back to being chattel?
Oh, absolutely. This is full scale, kind of like entrapment. As far as that aspect of it is concerned, you know, with them putting a police presence in there, with them, it kind of creates this element of fear mongering. It's multifaceted in terms of why they would be doing something like this, like going from police state to military state, which is just elevated at that point for all the reasons that you mentioned. And then you said something earlier that kind of sticks throughout the entirety of this conversation, which is that colleges are a business. So I look at it like this: the U.S. itself is a business being run by a failed business mogul, and everything under the guise of the U.S. is a subsidiary of it. So your prison system, your school system, public housing, all of these things are contrived by the federal government and carried out by those that are heads of these individualized states. And looking at it that way, I think people have a better understanding of kind of what's going on here.
Understood. Now, the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, has actually responded to what Donald Trump has stated. And let's take a look into what he has said, because he says some things that are correct, but at the same time, I want to point to something that is missed upon him. So let's get into this.
We cannot incarcerate our way out of violence. We've already tried that, and we've ended up with the largest prison population in the world without solving the problems of crime and violence. The addiction on jails and incarceration in this country, we have moved past that. It is racist, it is immoral, it is unholy, and it is not the way to drive violence down. We cannot return to the same failed strategies that got us here in the first place. Under the previous presidential administration, we requested more federal resources to address gun violence in our city. We continue to make that same call. We have made significant progress on our own, but there is so much more that we can do if we had real support from the federal government. We cannot.
So I feel like he's missing something. Can you expound on what you think he missed in that? If you thought he missed anything at all.
I mean, just on a fundamental level, appealing to the same system that's oppressing you. You can't appeal to the federal government. There is no working from within inside the government. You know, we've had since the 60s and 70s, we've had Black politicians, and it's only going to go so far. Black visibility is not Black power. And the reason why I bring that up in that stance is because the people that are going to be hit the hardest, and this is historical fact, are the Black people that live in Chicago, are the Black people that live in DC, are the Black people that live in New York, LA, so on and so forth. So it's like it sounds good theoretically, but it's not far enough. We can't lean on the same system that is hell-bent on keeping things as they are so they can keep on as they are.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. In fact, I want to share this with people so that we know exactly what we're dealing with. This is actually a breakdown in numbers. It says, how much does the Chicago Police Department actually spend each year? This came out in January of last year. It says, as part of the total city of Chicago budget adopted for the 2024 fiscal year that began on January 1st, the city council approved nearly $2 billion budget for the Chicago Police Department. Now, this is more approximately 1.99 billion, but of course, you could just basically say $2 billion. It continues, it says the police department budget represents 12% of the city's total $16.6 billion appropriations for fiscal year 2024 across all funds, including grants. Excluding grants, the Chicago Police Department budget makes up approximately 15% of the city's full $12.3 billion spending plan across all local funds. So $2 billion for the Chicago PD. And my question is, could those resources be better utilized in order to not enforce crime, but to prevent crime. Because the thing is, like, police is just, it's in the name, law enforcement. Police aren't crime prevention. They are not that. They're there to enforce the law. They're not there to prevent it. And so, as somebody with my particular ideology, I feel that they're constantly missing the root causes of crime. Now, he says that we can't incarcerate our way out of this. I agree, but put your money where your mouth is, or put the city's money where your mouth is, right? Because it feels like he's saying all this while still going, well, we got to spend $12 billion on Chicago PD. And I'm like, didn't you guys just have a bunch of schools that closed? It doesn't make sense to me. What about, programs to revitalize, city blocks? Like, for instance, the south side of Chicago, right? Why not revitalize that area? Why not create a grant program, more after school programs? Why not try to make it so that, hell, I have a lot of qualms with Zohan Mamdani because there's some things that are fishy about him. But one of the things that I actually think is actually a good idea, why not have city-owned grocery stores so that people can be able to afford more, so that they don't have to scrounge for pennies just to be able to buy food, and put them in areas where there are actual food deserts. Like, these are just a few ideas just right off the top of my head.
Yeah, absolutely spot on as far as that aspect of it is concerned. That's why I said that what he was stating is correct for the most part, but it's not going far enough, because in the same token, and this is that backdoor mechanism that I was talking about, you telling the people of Chicago, you understand this is messed up, you shouting that you know this is messed up and we can't incarcerate our way out of it. But if you greenlight this budget, that's part of the problem right there, where that money, like you stated a little bit earlier, can be reallocated to public services, because it's an actual fact that crime and poverty go together. Like, they correlate with one another. Where there is high crime, there's oftentimes high poverty. These are things that are confirmable. These are things that we can look at. Now, if I just stated earlier that the national average for poverty is 11%, 11.5%, I believe, and then Chicago is 17.2%. Part of the problem is you need enough social programs in place in order to be able to get people to be more aware of their environment, to be able to educate people through maybe through like literacy programs, through public education. People need healthcare. People need adequate housing. Here's the reality of it. There is a boatload of unhoused people, more than that, in the United States as a whole. And in major cities like Chicago, we see unhoused, we see in LA and New York, so on and so forth. But problem is, there's more than enough resources in order to be able to make sure people have housing, make sure people have food, healthcare, proper education. Not what they call education, because they're indoctrinating people into believing that this situation is normal, that this is what it is. And you cannot continue on like that. Like you stated just a moment ago, there are food deserts. Even in my old neighborhood of Woodside Houses, which is back home in Queens, they're creating a food desert by removing grocery stores or keeping things in there that do not are expired a lot of the time. That compounds the issue of having a food desert. Oftentimes in cities like Chicago, New York, LA, there is an over infestation of like rodents, which is health and safety at that point, or, because they don't do things like basic trash pickup. They believe that the people that are in these conditions or in these situations, be it you be in the projects or you be in prison, deserve to live in squalor because they didn't work hard enough in order to be able to get themselves out of it. Liberals believe that shit too. They just don't say it the way that the conservatives say it. And that's part of the issue right there, is that we as a people have to have a better understanding of what is being said to us. I go back to one of the things that I said in an earlier conversation that we had, which is when I was a kid and I didn't understand something, my mom would just send me to the room and look at the dictionary for this word or that word. We have to get back into understanding that and examining why things are what they are and point the finger at the correct place, which would be the system that's currently in place. It is literally unlivable for any and everybody outside of that less than maybe 1%. That is the capitalist class that controls all of the resources, all of the funding. John Henry Clark, just kind of riff on him a little bit, one stated that you cannot afford to, or the power structure can't afford to actually teach people that are oppressed, because once you figure this out, once you're educated, once you know enough to get out of your oppression, you know enough to get your people out of the oppression, they know enough to get their people and so on and so forth out of the oppression, which would upend the system. And those that are in power can't have us changing the status quo.
Yeah. You know, I think about, this is one of the reasons why the Black Panther Party was considered so dangerous in Chicago, because of what they were doing. They were actually, because it wasn't just giving food away. It wasn't just giving healthcare away. It wasn't just doing, you know, a free ambulance. It wasn't just, you know, doing free plumbing. It wasn't just doing that stuff. It was the education behind it that made them so dangerous. Because the problem is that if you're just giving stuff away, that's a charity. But if you're giving things away to people while educating them to have to wield their own power, that's mutual aid. And that's what makes the government so scared. And it's not, is it really the government? It's really the corporations, and the government is really the hammer that the corporations use against the people instead for the people, right? And so I'm looking at this possibility, and one of the things that is crazy to think about, if Donald Trump is willing to send the military into Chicago to fight crime, couldn't that money be used, instead of sending military, could it be used as a humanitarian force to help uplift the people instead of incarcerating them? Or use that money to just pour into the neighborhoods to lower the crime? Because as we all know, poverty and crime are linked very closely together. And at a commensurate rate, once you lower the amount of poverty, crime also follows. Because it's not exactly the one-to-one, because even, you know, people who are affluent or wealthy also commit crimes. Hello, we see it every day. But it is to a lesser degree because they don't have to commit crimes of desperation or lack of opportunity. So instead of diverting that money to the National Guard, why not just divert that money to the people who are the most disenfranchised in places like Chicago?
It would dismantle the system if they did it. That's precisely why they won't do it. It'll dismantle the system, and everything that they've been taught they now understand was a lie, as far as that particular aspect of it is concerned, right? Like, instead of the United States as a structure would have to understand what humanity is in order to be able to actually give genuine humanitarian aid to these places. When you look at the United States is the biggest dehumanizer, is the biggest destabilizer, is or wants to be the biggest bully on the block. And it's like, you know, kind of going back to the section we were talking about on China earlier. China is on some, you could throw that punch, but I'm gonna knock your ass out. And so, you know, that's the only way you get rid of a bully. Anytime you hear about the United States even going off the Panthers and their impact in Chicago and in LA and in New York and so on and so forth, they attempted to dismantle the Panthers by literally having feds knock on people's doors to tell them that they were poisoning the kids. So when you have a collective such as the Panthers that were about community above all else, that wanted the interest of the people, that were very educated, Dr. Huey P. Newton was extremely educated, extremely intelligent, knew the law better than the ones that were supposed to be enforcing it, because to kind of go back to what you stated earlier, law enforcement, let's call it what it is property protection. And who owns the property? Who owns the means of production, right? America itself should be America Inc. It is a business model. Any way you look at it, you literally have politicians now that are trading stock. Are you serious?
Yeah, well said.
So, you know, it's, we have to think beyond just this is what's happening right in front of us. What the United States government has done, in a sense, is kind of create this their method or their version of Plato's allegory. You can't see shit past the United States. The people in Plato's allegory can't see past the cave. So you don't know what's out there. You don't know what's behind the curtains. And what's even worse is they're dumbing you down so much that you're not even willing to examine. And I'm not calling nobody dumb. I'm just going off of the method that they're using.
Yeah.
You're not even willing to examine why things are what they are before you get to what things are, where they are, and where it's going.
That's true.
History is critical. History is important. Trump is an individual, but the system be the system, and it's been that way longer than you and I have been alive, or longer than I'm pretty sure anybody that's tuning in has been alive.
Yeah.
The U.S. is hell-bent on maintaining this imperialism, which is world rule over world rule, and then you finding people where it's like, yo, nah, this don't work.
Yeah.
This is cruel. This is inhumane. This is like, you got to be shitting me. But here we are.
One more question in regards to Chicago before we move on to our last piece that I want to cover. What would you say to the people who are saying that we need the National Guard here to fight crime? Particularly, there are some Black folks in Chicago that have been saying that they want President Trump to send, and there are videos that have been put out by Black people in particular that have been saying, yeah, we need, better crime prevention here. And there's been Black people posting videos and saying, I don't have anybody trying to, steal from me now in Chicago. I can walk outside at night safe and sound. What do you say to them who are convinced that what Donald Trump is doing is the right course of action?
I would try to build with them and just say, hey, listen, like, I understand where their fear is coming in at, but their fear is also contrived in large part by the United States. You got people on these mainstream news outlets. The mainstream news don't give you actual news. Who owns these outlets? Who owns the newspapers? Those who own the media control the narrative is what I would say. So if you saw this bullshit on Fox News or ABC or CNN or any of these other idiotic publications that don't do nothing but, echo the elites, then you're looking at this the wrong way. We have to examine it from what is actually causing people to do harm to somebody else. What is actually causing people to rob somebody? There's people out there with nothing to eat. There's people out there with no way to sleep. They're not robbing you because they want to. They've been devalued, so they themselves devalue everything else around them because the government has done everything it can in order to dehumanize them. Yeah. Be it a fucked up school system, be it, that guidance counselor, which is happened to me too, or, oh, you're not college material, you can't do this, or you can't, because college is the measuring stick for how smart somebody is. But you stated earlier that Trump went to an Ivy League school. We have to connect these things together and be like, a lot of these people that's in college don't be knowing shit. They just indoctrinated and can regurgitate information versus understand it, versus actually understand the material conditions and needs of the people, versus, and we have to really just sit down and build and actually take a long, hard look at what the cause of all of this is. There's cause and effect for everything. You didn't just get to the effect out of nowhere.
Yeah, of course. And there is a piece that also in regards to crime that Donald Trump has spoken about. And I really wanted to spend just a really short period of time on this one. But this actually just came out. Oh, that's not what I want to show. This actually just came out. I think it was within 24 hours. Donald Trump said this, and a lot of people have been correcting him. But of course, Donald Trump is going to use this because he's trying to feed his nationalistic base. Let's take a listen to this, and then we'll talk about the other side.
And what the penalty is going to be, if you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail no early exits, no nothing. You get 1 year in jail. If you burn a flag, you get, and what it does is incite to riot. I hope they use that language, by the way, did they?
Yeah, incite.
Incite to riot. And you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail. You don't get 10 years, you don't get a month. You get 1 year in jail, and it goes on your record. And you will see flag burning stopping immediately. Just
So didn't we have a Supreme Court case already about this?
But as far as like flag burning,
Yeah.
I don't remember off top. I'm pretty sure there is, though. I'm gonna be all the way honest and say I don't remember off top. I just find this shit funny that one of the biggest criminals is telling somebody else what a crime would be. Like, did you or did you not incite the shit that happened on January 6th? These are words that came out of his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
How quickly they forget the stupid shit that comes out of their own mouths is contradictory of what it is they say they believe. The United States is the biggest purveyor of crime as far as that aspect of it is concerned. And talking about flag burning, listen, everybody that is near or by a flag should burn that motherfucker. And here's why. The flag, the stars and bars, especially for Black folks in particular, have always represented state-sanctioned violence. How did we get here? We were kidnapped. What happened once we got here? They beat the shit out of us. They did all types of things to us. Some of the things that I, probably won't mention in a moment at the moment for everybody else's understanding. But in the grand scheme of America, slavery is not that far behind us. Chattel slavery is not that far behind us. And you go from chattel slavery to Jim Crow to mass incarceration. And when you look at the population that's behind these walls, Black people get incarcerated and do large numbers based off of the shit they think we did. We got evidence of these idiots doing these heinous things, and there's no penalty. Literally no penalty.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I just want to share this because Community Notes actually just shot Trump down. Let's take a look. It says the Supreme Court case Texas v. Johnson establishes that burning the American flag is protected speech under the First Amendment. So a lot of people are basically saying, like, you cannot do an executive order to that violates the First Amendment, and it's anti-free speech, and to be able to do that. However, one of the things that actually happened as of recently was that a gentleman decided to call Donald Trump's bluff. And in calling that said bluff, he got arrested. So I just want to share this because this gentleman now is speaking out and telling people that, and a lot of people are saying, well, the United States is fascist. And the thing is, like, a lot of us are like, no shit, Sherlock. We've been saying that for years. Where have you been? And shout out to Tired Peasant for this one, because she shared this, and I want to share what this gentleman said on the other side, because, well, he's got some points.
Yep, I'm being detained because I expressed my First Amendment right to burn the United States flag in public, not causing harm or causing any danger to any citizens or personnel in the area. Do this for every single one of you American citizens. We burn this flag in protest to that president who feels that it's his right to do whatever he wants, make whatever law he wants, regardless if it's legal or illegal. It is our First Amendment right to burn this flag, regardless of what the president says.
So this just goes to show that, the executive order is, now in effect because he wants to punish anybody that desecrates a flag. But if we're actually going to go by flag code, then everybody desecrates the flag.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's a fact, because it's even put, it's stated that you shouldn't pretty much people that paint their nails, people that do all types of shit with the flag are not necessarily using it the correct way, just to put it plain, which they look at as like a desecration of the flag.
Yeah. I mean, people literally have swim trunks and drawers. They wear US flag underwear. That's actually against flag code. That's actually desecrating the flag. And yet we allow companies that sell it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how many of those companies have it is made in China? And yet
that's
what
that's what I was going to say too.
It's kind of weird, right? It's like you want to go after somebody for lighting a match and putting a flag on fire, which is protected free speech. But at the same time, you're not going to go after the person that's wearing a flag as a bandana.
But this is also why the Constitution is like a flawed document. And I tell people this often, outside of the fact that I didn't remember that particular case law. But if you can, get you a copy or download a PDF version of the Constitution and read over it in your own time. I would ask everybody to do this and see how much bullshit is in there as far as that particular aspect of it is concerned. Because while it's like, all right, cool, you have this freedom of speech in the First Amendment, that's valid. When it diverges away from the program, they do everything and anything to suppress it. Look at what they've done to journalists throughout the course of history. Look at what they've done as far as revocation of passports. We could look at like Du Bois, who had his passport revoked. We could look at like a Paul Robeson, who had his passport revoked. Mm-hmm. We could look at people that have ended up being political prisoners. Mentioned Mumia earlier. You know, we got Angela Davis at one point was a political prisoner and also lost her spot teaching in California because of her affiliation with communism. There's always like this buzzword that the government uses to make people think that if they can't send you into exile, if they can't put you behind bars, if they can't murder you, these are all the things that they're talking about when they talk about neutralizing a threat. Kind of going back to the Black Panther Party momentarily, J. Edgar Hoover said the biggest threat to national security is the Black Panther Party. Let's look at what the Black Panther Party was doing when you put in health programs, when you put in education programs, when you put in breakfast programs to people that need it. The same way there's this clip of this guy burning a flag and getting arrested for it and talking about how his rights have been trampled on. There was also like a video that I seen the other day where these people were handing out pizzas to unhoused people. Police come out asking about a goddamn permit, or places or restaurants that'll fire their employees if they don't throw food out, if they give it away, because it's looked at as stealing instead of, yo, I know I'm going home and I got a warm bed and I know I got something to eat. This other human being don't have nothing, and you're telling me I can't give it to him because I'm subject to ending up in a similar situation or worse. Where's the humanity in that?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But we talking about like flag burning. Motherfuckers wasn't talking about crosses being burned on the lawns of black folks for however many decades. We brought up Chicago, bringing up the Black Panthers, Chairman Fred. These racists go and shoot up his headstone every chance they get.
They do. Yep.
You know, like it
for him. You know, they don't have any laws saying that you shouldn't desecrate the dead like that.
Even your baby's education, I would say start them at home and let them know what's real. They not too young to learn, because these same folks is out here teaching their kids racism that's the same age as your kids that's too young to learn whatever it is you think they too young to learn. You better tell them about real life and what's out there so they prepared for it. Because the way they're doing it now with removing programs that talk about history, particularly Black history,
yep,
by referring to it as critical race theory, which you don't get until you get to college. And even in college, you have to take a particular discipline to even learn critical race theory. My undergraduate or institutionalized undergraduate situation was in political science. I have a degree in poli-sci because I hated the system so damn much. I'm like, let me find out what these inner workings are. Let me find out what's going on, you know, with this, and then find all of the contradictions within it. We have to be able to approach contradictions head on and meet the truth where it's at. The United States don't give a damn about its citizens and will do any and everything in order for the people that's at where they at to stay where they are.
Yep, absolutely. Now I want to switch gears, but one of the last things I want to talk about is actually employment, especially within the Black community. This has been a story that I covered about a week or so ago, and I just want to get your analysis on this. So this is actually a report about 300,000 Black women have left the workforce. I say fired, or I would say laid off, but let's just watch this. And if you would like for me to pause, so if you want to make a point, please feel free.
To the economy now, where staggering numbers have been released surrounding Black women in the labor force. A new report shows more than 300,000 Black women have left the workforce in just the last several months. That's according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Joining me now is gender economist Katika Roy to break this all down and why they're leaving. Katika, thank you so much for being with us. You recently wrote an article where you say that this isn't happening by accident. Why do you think it is happening?
This is happening because of cuts to public sector positions. So if you look at the federal labor force, Black women make up just over 12% of the federal labor force. It's about double their representation in the labor force overall. And when you have targeted cuts up to 50% in organizations such as the Department of Education and HHS, you're not just trimming the fat, you're actually cutting the economic backbone for Black women.
Wow. And so what are some of the spillover effects from all of this?
Well, one of the things that we know is that there is a connection between women's labor force participation and GDP. So just Black women's labor force participation has dropped by just over 2% in the last 3 months. And that has sucked over $37 billion out of US GDP. So this is the economic cost of gender policy ignorance.
So let me get your thoughts on this, because a lot of people are saying that, well, if they get fired out of the public sector, they can just go into the private sector. What's the big deal?
Private sector is exponentially harder because they're not beholden to the same restrictions the public sector would be. That's for starters, as far as like hiring practices and shit like that. And then the other part of it too is I kind of want to just preface everything I'm about to say. I understand the topic, but I'm not a fan of just highlighting just this particular group or that one. Like I would feel the same way if it was just, oh, Black men have this many people unemployed. The problem with that is, especially, outside of just the liberal take that this woman had on it, was it's a divide and conquer tactic utilized by the system. So if we highlight these women, what about the Black men that are without jobs and the statistics in order to be able to prove that, right? And then we're talking about Black unemployment without even attaching the other part of it, which is Black underemployment, which would be, yeah, you working, but you don't have enough to get the basic necessities that you need. I grew up around people that worked and was on welfare and had to do different things in order to make ends meet so they could feed their families. And again, I grew up in a housing project. Like I said, above all else, it's peace and love to my brothers and sisters. But like, we have to also, as a collective, come together and be like, all right, well, this is what this public mainstream news outlet is saying. This is what the reality of these DEIs, which was, used to be known as, I don't know if people still use the term, but affirmative action, is everybody, as Black women and Black men in particular, are subject to this. The Black unemployment rate is double that for your white counterparts, and to have a white woman getting up there talking about what she thinks the problem is, that's problem number one right there. How the hell are you going to understand something you never experienced? You will never experience what these Black women got to go through. White men have never experienced what Black men got to go through, and the bullshit they tell you is, oh, well, I'm not like that. You part of the problem because you're not telling the people that are like that how messed up it is, because you don't want to lose whatever station in life you got.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if we're looking at this right, since the beginning of the year, 300,000 Black women have exited the workforce, is the way that they would phrase it, or have left the workforce because of the elimination of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in talking about taking the backbone away from them economically, why is all of the economic responsibility on Black women to begin with? And then it's that if we examine that, we have to go back to who are they, who is incarcerated en masse? Is it not black men? Is it not their partner, their brother, their son, so on and so forth? I get asked this question a lot because I'm from the projects and a lot of the homies got like cases or ended up in tough situations. What separated me from that? How did I end up not like that? And it's literally a matter of choice and chance. Mom's laid everything out for me from the beginning in order for me to be able to make my own thoughtful decisions. It's literally situations where I left friends 30 seconds ago and 30 seconds later, police got them. And then they going and they doing bids. And even if you do a bid as a teenager, as a black man in America, that should stay on your record.
Yeah.
And even if you got an education, even if you got an institutionalized education, such as myself, look at your employment rate. Look at the employment rate for your white counterparts. These racial disparities are also something that's contrived by the same goddamn system. So we keep getting up here, and these people that's on these mainstream media outlets are saying what Mumia Abu Jamal refers to as allowable language. They saying what they allowed to say, because the moment they take that shit too far, they up out of there. They losing their job, and they ain't gonna go that far.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the crazy part is, the same, like, for instance, I have to admit, confession time. I did watch that Jubilee episode with Amanda Seales where she was versus 20 Black conservatives. And the crazy part is a lot of people, a lot of them were saying, well, there's not enough black men in the household and they're not raising their kids. And number one, statistically, actually, black men are actually more present in their children's lives than any other race that's actually been done. So therefore, we are actually more present in kids' lives. That's one thing. But the second thing is, once you go into the why as to why there weren't that many black men raising their kids, was because a lot of them were incarcerated. Well, why were they incarcerated? Well, you got to look at two things. Look what the CIA did as far as drugs. And number two, you also got to look at things like the 94 crime bill, and as well as how poverty contributes to crime. And so once you do that, then guess what? There are men going out to work, but some of these jobs that these men are doing aren't very legal. So guess what? They get caught up and then they get into the system, even though they were still trying to raise their kids and take care of their families.
Yeah, because nobody is trying to see their babies go hungry. Nobody is trying to see somebody that's dependent on them not have. That is psychologically damning. You know what I'm saying? Like, as outside of just the providing, outside of being a great partner, it's like, yo, like, how do you look at your babies and tell them, yo, we ain't got enough to eat because this job that I'm working ain't paying me enough for us to be able to eat. And ain't paying me enough for us to be able to put clothes on all y'all backs. And that is life for the lot of us. You know what I'm saying? Like, people live in check to check. People that, there was a point in time in which even working 2-3 jobs, living in New York, I'm like going to the grocery store with my wife, fiance, then it's like, yo, we kind of got to put some of this back because we don't have enough money to pay for all of this and pay rent at the same time.
Yep, you got to choose.
And people that's looking at that is like, yo, I don't want to have to choose between my basic life necessities. So here's what we're doing. You have to go outside of the system because the system itself is hell bent on keeping you in the situation that you are. Yep. Black folks get fired faster. Black folks, even from school age, get suspended at a higher rate. They're faced with expulsion. Anything you can think of as far as obstacles, the system will throw it in front of them. Yep. I remember being my first interaction with police, I was 9 or 10 years old. I was in the 5th grade. I forged my mom's name on a letter. I was, of course, disciplined for it, but it was a small note. And there's 3 officers standing in front of me in the office, in the principal's office of the school. Over a forged note. You see what I'm saying? So, and it's like that in New York, or, having my first little summer job or whatever, and I'm walking home and I got the lieutenant stopping me, talking about I look suspicious. Or the cops is at the crib because they looking for one of the homies, not even looking for me, trying to get information. I'm like, nope, I ain't seen them. So the state does these things. You are, whether people want it, you closer to prison than you are to being free in this country that people think they are, which is why books like I want to say Arasami Burton's tip of the spear is important because he draws that parallel within it. And it's important to understand that. You're not as free as you think you are.
Right.
As evidenced by that video you just showed, you don't have freedom of speech if it runs counter to the program.
Yeah.
You don't have freedom of press if it runs counter to the program. Let's look, because you got the keffiyeh behind you. I got to touch on it. Let's look at the situation in Israel. Look at how many journalists have been murdered from telling the goddamn truth.
I think it was over 300.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And or look at what they've taken out. They've taken out journalists. They've taken out schools. They've taken out hospitals. Look at the ghetto in America. Your hospital is crap. You under heavy police occupation. Militarized police occupation.
Absolutely.
So people have to examine these things a little bit further, examine the nuance that's in it. Yeah, somebody could be saying something and it sounds eloquent and it sounds articulate, but when you look deeper, it's bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Look, I had more questions, but you have been more than generous with your time. I promised you 45 to 55 minutes, and we are over that. But man, I'm glad I had you on, because this was a very well stated, deep analysis that you have took. You not only took us 50,000 feet, but you also brought us back down to ground. You landed the plane smooth, like one of them superstar pilots that get on the intercom. It's like, so we'll be flying at 50,000 feet. I hope you guys are ready to go. I hope you guys got yourself your peanuts and maybe a little Long Island iced tea. We're gonna be enjoying this. We're gonna be flying for about 2 hours from Philadelphia to Florida, and I hope you guys enjoy your vacation.
I appreciate it, man. Once again, I appreciate you having me on and allowing me to come speak on your platform. So thank you for it.
Yeah, thank you so very much. Also, just to let everybody know, your group, All African People's Revolutionary Party. This is the website. Also put in the website in the description so you guys can take a look at it. So this is the organization that you're with as well. So if you guys would like to give them a look, I highly recommend it. Just like what Kwame Ture said, every revolutionary has to belong to an organization in order to be able to make real change. So I just want to thank you for coming on and having this wonderful, worthwhile conversation with me. And thank you for elevating the conversation even more than even I anticipated. And I anticipated a lot. So thank you so very much.
Peace. Y'all have a good one. Everybody enjoy the rest of your day and be safe, but stay dangerous. Y'all have a good one.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, folks. So that was Shaquille Sunflower. Thank you guys very much for staying for that segment. I'm glad that I was able to cover these subjects. If you guys go ahead and please give a like to the stream so that we may be able to reach more people and expand the thoughts that were reflected upon here so that we can really save ourselves within this system. Because to be honest with you, ain't no politician come to save us. So we have to do it ourselves. So thank you very much for that. Now, one thing I'm going to do before we get into the chat is I would like to do one thing. I would like to go over and thank the patrons on Patreon. You know I have to. Not because it's just a thing to do, but because I really want to, because they literally keep the lights on. And I'm very deeply appreciative. Why? Because why not? Also, they're wonderful and very giving people. Also, people who don't even contribute. They, people who just like to stream and share. I appreciate you guys too. But here are the tiers. We have Mega Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters. We have Comrades, Solidarity, and JB members. And to all new members, thank you so very much for helping keep the channel afloat and keeping me living, essentially. So, and with that being said, just to let you guys know, my channel is demonetized. So if you guys like to contribute to the channel, you guys can also contribute through Patreon, and PayPal as well. And yeah, so thank you so very much to everybody up in this piece. All right, let's get into some comments in the chat because we got some things to talk about. I know you guys are thirsty to talk. All right, so let me check to see if we have any Rumble rants. I wonder if I have any gifted subs on Kick. I haven't gotten my first one yet, but hopefully we'll get one soon. None yet, but we are good. Okay, so we have somebody watching. All right, great. I'm also trying to get more people on the alternative sites like Rumble and Kick. My goal is to try to get to 500. If you guys would like to, you guys can also subscribe to Kick as well as on Rumble. And in fact, the good part about these is that if you guys want to contribute to the channel so that you guys can be able to, if you guys want to do things like, on YouTube it's called Super Chats. So if you guys want to do things, something like that on Rumble or on Kick, I am monetized on those platforms. So if you guys would like to, you guys can also do that there as well. So thank you very much for that. All right. Let's get into this. So we have Edward coming in saying, "What's up, JB? Good to see you, Edward." Edward also continuing, he says the U.S. government believes in Israel first. Okay, we'll talk about that when we get to that particular subject. Edward says, "We pay these politicians with our votes and money, but the lobbyists pay them even more, so they do the bidding of the corporations and lobbyists." So thank you very much for that, Edward. We have CBC voter coming in saying, "Happy Tuesday at JB. Good to see you, CBC voter." We also have Kat coming in saying, "Hi, JB. Good to see you, Kat." Okay, we have Terry Connolly coming in saying, Conley, sorry. "Good afternoon, JB and comrades. Good to see you, Terry, up in here." We have Sean coming in saying, "Good afternoon, JB. Looking forward to the stream as well as my spouse's birthday this week." Well, happy birthday to your spouse. Oh, man. It's got to be a wonderful feeling. You know what? My niece had her birthday, I think, over a week ago. Instead of getting a cake, she actually had a pie. And I had a friend that he didn't want a wedding cake. He wanted a wedding cookie. And they got him this big, gigantic cookie for his wedding. If you would switch from a cake to a pie or to a cookie, would you? Let me know. All right. Thank you very much for that, Sean. Kat says, "JB, have you thought about joining Memes TV? Richard Wolf and Lee Camp are there. It's worker owned." I would love to. Unfortunately, I don't think my channel's big enough. So that's that. But I also, one of the other people who's on there is JT Chapman, who is Second Thought, the channel. I would love to join, a group like Memes TV. But unfortunately, I don't think my channel's big enough. I would love, to reach out, and if they were, wanting to have, some type of deal with me on my channel, I would, that'd be cool. Because it's basically a co-op, and it's many different leftist and socialist creators and communist creators that are actually on there. But I haven't been reached out to. But if they ever want to reach out to me, my email is always in my description. So I'm available. All right. And thank you for this. Cat says, "Just call him Short Eye Don or President Pedo." Oh my gosh. Edward says China has the fastest rising economy in the world because they are not overspending on the military and are focusing on the needs of the people. Chris C says, "Hey, y'all." Roger Meadows says HBCUs failed to help secure jobs for graduates by not investing in companies owned by our community that they can transition to upon graduation. So they were left to go to apply to white-owned companies. That's actually a really good point too, you know. But the question then also goes, was that on purpose? Because sometimes I wonder that, you know. And weren't some of the first HBCUs, weren't they actually started by some white people? I don't think they were started by Black people. Let me know. I missed that part. I didn't need to research that. But thank you very much. John Kemper, aka Blue Marble, aka Adam Bashir, coming in saying, "Why not stay out of my city with this BS? This country is a criminal, and without a crime, how can the poor survive?" To be honest with you, I talked about this on Sunday. Is that there's some people who are committing crimes in order to survive, and if they didn't commit those crimes, then what will happen to them? And I'm not saying that they should commit crimes. I'm saying that we should create conditions so that they don't have to commit crimes. And then people say, well, they just need to lift themselves up by their bootstraps. Technically, they are. They're just doing it through means that are not necessarily legal. But here's the problem. Just because it's illegal just because it's legal doesn't mean make it ethical. And just because it's illegal doesn't make it unethical. Like, for instance, feeding homeless people in a city like Orlando is considered illegal, but ethically, it's the right thing to do. See what I mean? So the problem is that a lot of times people, will demonize somebody because, like, if they're doing something illegal to make means, technically they are still working. The problem is that you're not creating conditions where it's through the legal means in order to be able to survive, or it's there, but it's just not enough. And just like what Shaquille was saying, the problem is that some of us are employed, but we're considered underemployed, meaning that we just don't make enough to survive. And that's by design too. And that also keeps the crime rate going up too. So then they can continue to incarcerate and lock us up. That's by design. Leroy coming in and saying, facts. I grew up in Far Rock, New York. That school to prison military pipeline goes wild. Glad I was fortunate to avoid both. Yeah. And a lot of people who are not from affluent areas, a lot of people from affluent areas are shocked to realize that we literally have police patrolling our schools and up and down the hallways at our schools. They're called SROs, school resource officers. I remember being in the third grade, and there was a school resource officer that taught the DARE program at my school. And in fact, towards the end, he would actually have us do a particular type of clap. He would have us clap with one finger, then go to 2, then go to 3, then go to 4, and then go to 5, right? I forget his name, but he was also kind of goofy, and he would, make voices and things like that to keep us entertained while he's teaching us about the dangers of drugs. Meanwhile, I'm literally taking medications to keep my kitty from being rejected. But anyways, we literally have school resource officers, and when you get in trouble, right? Just like what happened with Shaquille, they'll have school resource officers in front of you just for forging a permission slip, which is crazy, right? And so, how many times have we seen kids with their phones out at school, and school resource officers are basically handling our kids like they're grown adults? And it's crazy. It's crazy, man. Let's go to Mouse says you have to be smart and selective. Roger says, JB, I have a third perspective for Shaq in the DM. So let me take a look at that. Okay, so let me go here. Thank you for this, Roger. He says, regarding Trump sending the troops into cities to protect the local population, which I might add a good half of Black people who live in these communities welcome. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this. It all goes according to interest. Let me take you back to the Reconstruction era. Was it a good idea for President Grant to send and leave Union troops in cities who committed insurrection against the United States for secession over slavery? For 10 years, Union troops stay acting as the bodyguards of newly emancipated people, our ancestors. President Eisenhower did the same when he sent 1,000 paratroopers to Central Little Rock, Arkansas, to disperse the mob, bringing order and protecting those little Black girls from the mob. President Trump is doing the exact same thing. This is not protecting really white people, it's protecting Black people from Black people. All of these Republican presidents did what they did to protect freedmen. We might not even be here if it wasn't for that protection. Because where our ancestors would have gotten lynched, they didn't because you were protected. Now the local whites didn't want them there. They saw this as federal overreach and authoritarian. Now I have to ask, were they right for feeling that way? Was the federal government being authoritarian by leaving Union troops in those towns to protect and be the bodyguards of our ancestors? Sometimes it's hard to be consistent when you're on the other side. A sword is good as long as you're the one holding and wielding it. But when it's hit out of your hands and being wielded against you, is that fair? Do we say, let's get rid of all swords? The thing is that the only thing that I will guarantee is that those troops are not going to stay in DC or whatever in the city forever. Then when they leave, the Cretans and sharks are going to re-victimize us again. During Reconstruction and Jim Crow, it was white supremacists. Today, it is ourselves victimizing each other, so the problem was never solved. That is what the history tells us. Okay. And he says, studies show that Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in the United States. This trend is linked to several factors, including disparities in traditional employment opportunities, desire for independence, and wealth creation. Here's why this is relevant to Black women experiencing unemployment or underemployment. Discrimination and limited opportunities in traditional workplace faces biases in hiring, promotions, fair treatment in the workplace. Some Black women may see entrepreneurship as a way to create their own opportunities and escape limitations within the existing systems. The rise in unemployment rates, specifically for Black women, as noted in recent reports, could be further exacerbating this situation. Desire for autonomy and flexibility. Entrepreneurship offers the potential for greater control over one's career and a more flexible work-life balance, particularly important for those with caregiving responsibilities, passion, and purpose. Many Black women entrepreneurs are driven by strong passion for their chosen field and the desire to serve their communities through their businesses. Building a legacy, starting a business could be a great way to create financial stability and build generational wealth for their families and communities. However, it's important to acknowledge the significant challenges Black women face in entrepreneurship. Limited access to capital. Black women face disproportionate barriers to accessing funding, including loans and venture capital, with a higher resilience of self-funding and higher reliance on self-funding, facing greater scrutiny on loan applications. Systemic bias, discrimination, bias within the financial industry and the broader business world can complicate funding and access business growth opportunities for Black women entrepreneurs. Socioeconomic factors, existing wealth and income disparities, can impact the ability of Black women to build and sustain businesses, making it more challenging to bootstrap and overcome financial hurdles. Difficulty in sustaining businesses despite the high rate of business initiation. A relatively small percentage of Black women-owned businesses survive beyond 5 years, often due to the types of industries they are concentrated in and the lack of funding access. In essence, while Black women are increasingly turning to entrepreneurship, fueled by both desire for opportunity and a reaction to workplace inequities, they also face significant hurdles that highlight the need for systemic changes and supportive ecosystems to foster long-term success. And so my issue is the fact that they are, if women wanted to do this on their own, then I think that's fine. But the firing of them is just wrong like that. Like, and not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody wants to. And it's not for everybody. And I'll say this. Nobody should get into something out of duress. Because next thing you know, if they're put in duress for doing it, then is it really their choice? Is it really a free choice? No, and so that's one thing I will say. It's like, that's why, I am against what the government did in doing this to Black women, right? Or people in general, right? Is that they didn't need to, but they did, And then on top of that, the whole point about sending the National Guard in. They say it's to protect freedmen. I don't think they give a shit about us. I don't think they give a shit. I think it's really just to make it look like they're doing something. And ultimately, if they can get a few of us, as, part of it, if they can get a few of us incarcerated along with it, they're fine with it. How many freedmen are in prison right now? Right? I mean, and so, yeah, some presidents did that in the past, but at the same time, it wasn't really out of the goodness of their hearts they were doing it. It was really for a purpose to try to keep the Union together. But even then, like, the Union soldiers weren't really good to Black people either anyway. So I don't think we should, I think we should look at it from a who benefits type of situation. We were just caught in the crossfire of being a beneficiary. It just happened to fall on us, but it doesn't feel like it was really intentional. Like, I don't put it past them to, if they could just allow it to happen, they would. But at the times, they had to keep the Union together. And plus, they didn't want to lose, they didn't want Black folks to go up in arms. Like, it wasn't a moral decision for them. It was a calculated decision. And even then, in a calculated decision, if they send the National Guard into Chicago, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's not to protect freedmen. It's because here's the thing: we're gonna talk about Black on Black violence, then we might as well talk about freedmen on freedmen violence. Who's also going to be incarcerated? Well, other freedmen. It's like, so it's not really about protecting freedmen, right? It's and the thing is like, people, like, even Democrats are on board for this. They may play like they're not, but they are too. And ultimately, it's like, if you really want to protect freedmen, then why aren't we improving the material conditions of us in a fundamental way, so that we are better protected by having less the poverty to crime pipeline, right? It's a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. And so this is why, I'm gonna be honest with you, I kind of disagree with you, Roger, on this one, because they really don't give a shit, and they never will give a shit. And this is why I disagree with him sending the National Guard, because it's a Band-Aid on a wound. and it may help temporarily, but as long as you keep the poverty system in place, guess what? Other freedmen will also victimize other freedmen, just as well as other people will victimize us as well. So it really is never about protecting us. It's about quelling some of that so that they can garner more Black support for the next election. And then after that, yeah, then they'll thumb their nose at us once again. But Sela says entrepreneurship has less economic power as individual solidarity as part of a cooperative and union is the only way to make real change for long-term purposes. Sela continues, says this capitalist empire needs for it populations to be divided in order to keep its neoliberal colonizing police state to survive. Yeah. Also, there was a video that I saw that I would like to share as well. I should share. I think I will. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot this other piece. I'm sorry. I missed out on this. I'm sorry, Roger. I'm just trying not to go too long on my streams anymore. It says, as they point to you towards the bad news with Black women, always look at what they're not pointing to your gaze towards. You see, they show these things to make you feel hopeless, but what I showed you was empowering. Something they'll never show you is a trick to support their interest to be your hero when we can be your own hero. Now, one thing I will say is, like, okay, how are we empowering Black women to not only be their own heroes, but also open things like work our own cooperatives and try to do something like that? You know, like that part, I definitely will say I agree with. Like, if we can help Black women to move towards them owning their own means of production. But this also means fighting against the powers that be, meaning the big corporate powers. Because unfortunately, what they do is that they corner the market. They have a huge market share. And then the Black women who are in business for themselves, they don't make enough. And then those businesses will buy the business from the Black woman. And then the Black woman will sell that business to the bigger business. And then they'll get a few coins afterwards, but then the business will walk away with their product. And then they'll make even more money off of it because they can upscale. And so the Black women, the business sold, but then what are they left with, right? And so I think the problem is that as long as you still have these corporations in place, it's going to happen. Like, look what happened with BET. BET got sold to Viacom. BET, which was a Black-owned cable station, got sold to a white-owned, power by a white-owned corporation. BET is not Black-owned. And so that's the same thing, right? It's a lot of times, and the problem is they'll keep the poverty dangling in front of your face. And so then Black women may go, well, hey, look, they're about to give me $2, $3, $4 million for my business. And that will help me out a lot because I'm still kind of struggling a little bit. And so I'll sell it to them and then have that to live off of a little bit. At least that'll give me a nice little piece of a nest egg or something. But then that goes away because we see how, I don't know, maybe, am I sounding too pessimistic? I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I'm trying to be realistic, but that's the problem with the capitalist system. Like, even still, you literally have to dismantle the system first. It feels like you literally have to dismantle the system first in order for anybody to be able to get opportunity really in owning the means of production. That's what it feels like. I don't know, man. I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but it's just, I'm frustrated with the system. I'm just really am. And yes, I will show the segment with Sagar. I won't be able to show the entire thing, but yeah. He says none of these presidents have ever done anything for our benefit. What's important is whether or not we have the foresight to place ourselves in a position to benefit. Chess, baby, chess. Yeah. Thanks. Sheila says, JB, I sent you a story via email about New York City Mayor Adams and police internet surveillance. Ooh, I'm gonna take a look at that. Thank you very much for that, Sheila. All right, so I want to share this before we move on because I think this is a worthwhile video. Seeing that we just talked about what especially a lot of Black people are going through in this country. And I think it's absolutely necessary that we go over this because this has never really ended. And I think that we need to revisit this from time to time. So I just want to go over this. I just want to go over this before we move on to the next segment. Okay, so this is from a documentary, actually. Some of you guys may recognize this, but some of you not. But this is valid, and just stick with it for a second.
There's a certain sort of silent consciousness about or what it means to be American that I sense coming from white folks that I'd like to talk about. Before I do that, I'd like to say one more thing that's hard about talking about racism, and that is that people of color are spilling their guts and doing education to white people. Let me explain to you how you've got this wrong. Let me explain to you how you've got that wrong. Let me explain. And then we get cross-examined, and it's like, well, maybe your problem is blah, 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 blah. And it's always, racism gets looked at as a person of color's problem, and it's not. We're like on the receiving end of the problem, but we're not the problem. I walk in a world where Black people, where Latinos, where Asians, where Arabs, all these different people are experienced as problem people, and that, well, we're going to deal with the person of color problem when in fact racism is essentially a white problem. And that for you to understand what racism is about, you're going to be so uncomfortable. You're going to be so different from who you see yourself to be now that there's just no way for you to get it from where you're sitting. And I'm not saying that you could never get it. I mean that you need to step outside of your skin and step outside of what seems really comfortable and familiar to you and launch out into some real, for you, unknown territory. And you haven't gone out there like you haven't, gotten in proximity to Black people, as you say, because you don't have to. And that's part of what it means to be American, to me, is to have all these things that you can do if you want to, that you don't have to do if you don't want to do. And there's a way in which American and white and human become synonyms. That why can't we just treat each other as human beings? To me, when I hear it from a white person, it means, why can't we all just pretend to be white people? I'll pretend you're a white person, and then you can pretend to be white. Why don't you eat what I eat? Why don't you drink what I drink? Why don't you think like I think? Why don't you feel like I feel? God damn it, I'm so sick and goddamn tired of hearing about that. I'm sick of that. That's what it means to be human being to me. That's what it means to be white. You think that, hey, it'll all be fine when we just treat each other like human beings. And what that says to me is, don't be yourself. Be like me. Keep me comfortable. Connect where I'm ready to connect. Come out to my place. Or maybe I'll come down and get some artifacts from your place. That is bullshit.
And this is part and parcel as to why a lot of black people feel the way we feel. Because we're constantly being told, in order to have humanity, you have to be just like, and then the colonizer, and then the people who set up the white power structure. We're told that you have to be like us. And if you're not, well, then guess what? Then you deserve to be lower. And even when we acclimate to that, we still are treated as lower. Even as a working class, a white worker is still regarded higher than a worker who is black. So when people say, we have to focus on class, not race, you're missing the part where even within class, there's still classes, because a white worker is still considered higher than a black worker. And that's the thing. So to all my comrades out there that continuously say we need to focus just on class, baby, being black is a class. It is a subclass. And this is why I talk about not just class, but I also talk about identity as well. Because if it was just class disparities that existed, then of course, then you wouldn't need to focus on race. But there is even disparities among the working class. So therefore, and the disparities are by those different identifying factors, which are maybe immutable characteristics that we may have. So I'm sorry, but a dude that has grown up within the same with the same economic status as me may be regarded as better just because he was born Irish, German, Italian, or Polish descent. He may be regarded more. Even though we have the same background, same class, make the same amount of money, he's still regarded as better, because that's how the system treats you. And that's part of the division. And that's why we have to focus also on talking about both, because the system perpetuates both on us. And in order to be able to come together, then the bigotry that is perpetuated by white supremacy as a tool of capitalism, you have to take that bigotry that you may have internalized because of the system. You may not actively try to perpetuate it, but it is fed to you. You have to toss that thing aside. What did my comrade, former member of RBN, Josano, used to say? Decolonize your mind. Even us black people, we have to decolonize our mind, because we may have internalized white supremacy. This happens. Y'all saw that on the Jubilee debate with Amanda Seals. There's a lot of internalized white supremacy in there. Even in not just freedmen, but also black immigrants. They also have internalized white supremacy. Even in people who are Asian American, they have internalized white supremacy. Everybody, all y'all have internalized white supremacy. I have internalized white supremacy. This is why we have to purge it. We have to purge it. Because then what happens? What does it do? It places us on a hierarchy of who's more worthy of life than the next person. And the crazy part is that is bullshit. We have been ingrained in who's more worthy than the other person, when in reality, all life is precious. It is all equal. The problem is we've been trained, we've been inculcated, we've been imbued with this mindset that not everybody's equal. Not everybody's the same when it comes to their value. This is why we put more value on certain people. Hell, we even do it by gender. Oh, I'm gonna get into it right now. We put more value on women than we do on men when it comes to their lives. Like, oh my God, they're killing women and children. And I'm like, but what about the men? What about them? Oh, well, it's more planned. We have less empathy because they're dead. What? I thought a life was supposed to be equal to a life. Like, can we talk about it? And then on top of that, this is one of the reasons why this system cannot sustain itself. Because we're always trying to divide by putting one life or one person's value above another. And that is part of white supremacy. It's a classification of different people based on immutable characteristics in order to say which one's better than the other, based on an opinion of a particular people from a particular land that decided to exploit other people from another particular place, another particular land for their own personal gain. And that's really the root of white supremacy. And so then when we get to a point where we start to say, well, I'm this particular person, I'm this particular type of black versus the other particular type of black, because we've been here and we look at people who are from Africa and they eat a specific thing, and oh my God, look at them. They're so deranged, or they're so savage. We're doing what white supremacists did. We're doing the same thing. And then when an immigrant comes here and then looks at us and goes, oh my God, they're so ratchet, they're so ghetto. Oh my God, we can't be like that. Then you're doing the same thing that your colonizers did. We all have to decolonize our mind, and it is a constant work in progress. You're never going to stop decolonizing your mind until you're dead. But the work is worthwhile, because by the time you get older, then you'll be better. That decolonization work has to happen. You have to constantly keep growing, because just like a tree, when a tree stops growing, what happens? Exactly. I just wanted to bring that up really quick, because I saw that video and I was just like, man, that video slaps. But yeah. So with that being said, we're going to go into the next subject that I want to get into. And we're going to be talking about Florida. So, of course, we have Shaquille Sunflower on. Great conversation. Let's get into this one. Florida is funding Israel, not us. Ooh-wee. Roger sent me a good one today. All right, let's get into it. So let me tell you guys this. It should be no secret to any of you that Ron DeSantis doesn't give a damn about Floridians. He doesn't. He's too busy funding Israel because he doesn't want to fund Floridians like you and me. Let's get into this, because I think this is very important for us to see why this is. So shout out to Roger Meadows for this story, because I think this is another point where we can point to that our country really only looks out for the people at the top, especially when it comes to the, how should I say, the military base in the Middle East that was created in 1948 in order for our nation, or really the corporations in our nation, to have ownership over that land because of its resources. Now let's get into this. So this is out of the Bradenton Times. Let me enlarge this just to make sure everybody can read this along with me. Let's get into it. It says Florida removes risk standards for local governments purchasing Israeli bonds. So let's get into this. Of course, you see Ron DeSantis shaking hands with the demon himself, Benjamin Netanyahu. It says beginning July 1st, financial risk standards for local governments in Florida using public money to invest in bonds funding Israel's government to be removed. Let's stop there just for 1 second. What does Israel have that Florida doesn't? Oh, free healthcare. Do we have that here in Florida? No. Okay. What else? Does Israel have free college? Oh, yeah, they have that. Okay. Do we have in Florida? Oh, we don't have that. No. They have consistent funding coming from a major superpower to us for weapons. Do we have the same support here in Florida? No. Seems to me that Florida, and by Florida, I mean both parties, because it's not just Ron DeSantis, is more focused on upholding Israel than they are in upholding Floridians. They're more interested in upholding a white supremacist project than upholding Floridians. Is Ron DeSantis Florida first? Baby, let's get into it. All right, let's continue. It says the change comes just months after a major credit rating agency. You have Moody's, Standard & Poor's, you have another one. Says they warned that the bonds were a high risk of default and potential junk rating. Palm Beach County is facing a lawsuit from its residents after investing 15% of its savings portfolio in Israeli bonds, making the county the world's largest investor in Israeli bonds. Palm Beach County is one of the biggest funders of Israeli bonds in the world. Do you know? Wait, hold up. Do you know who also lived in Palm Beach County? Jeffrey Epstein. Oh my God. What a coincidence. Epstein himself, he lived in Palm Beach County. You know, the same Palm Beach County in Florida where we had Attorney General Pam Bondi who did a sweetheart deal with Jeffrey Epstein so he can get a lighter sentence. Yes, that Pam Bondi, who is now the Attorney General of whose administration? Donald J. Trump. My goodness, isn't this interesting? If you follow the money, then you'll find out who puts who first. Who's on first? Well, apparently not us. Let's continue. It says the only foreign bonds that Florida governments are allowed to invest in by law are those from Israel. Meaning, we can't give bonds to China. We can't give bonds to Cuba. We can't give bonds to France. We can't give bonds to Italy. We can't give bonds to Japan. We can't give bonds to Germany. We can't give bonds to Poland. We can't give bonds to Ukraine. We can't even give them bonds. We can't give bonds to Argentina with Milei and his crazy looking ass. We can't even give them bonds. Can we give it to Belarus? Nope. Can we give it to Oman? Nope. Damn sure can't give it to Iran. Can we give it to South Africa? No. Can we give it to Nigeria? No. Give it to Britain? No. Can we give it to Canada? No. Who else can we? None of the above, except for Israel. You see where this is going? You see? Let's read on. Let's read on. Bond purchases have become a key means for Israel to raise funds for its war efforts through U.S. states and localities, utilizing U.S. taxpayer dollars in addition to the billions in aid the nation receives from the United States at the federal level. So they're not just getting money from the federal level, but also the state and county municipal level. The introduction of the bill, followed by Moody's rating agency downgrading Israel's bonds from an A to a BAA or bad rating because there are a bunch of shitty ass sheep. It says, citing the nation's geopolitical turmoil and long-term financial risk, which is much higher than is typical due to its war efforts. Two other major U.S. credit rating agencies slightly downgraded Israel just last year. They also downgraded the United States, by the way. The law, which passed unanimously through the Florida legislature in April and was recently signed by Governor Ron DeSantis, eliminates A ratings requirements for such bond investments. I want you guys to focus on this because here is buried in this. It says the law, which passed unanimously through the Florida legislature, unanimously, meaning both parties supported it, meaning both parties are trash, garbage, refuse. This is why the Florida Democratic Party and the Florida Republican Party are trash. They need to be thrown into the dustbin of history, never to be remembered again. And so guess what? We have an election next year in 2026. And you're going to have either Casey DeSantis, Ron DeSantis Boothang, or Byron Donalds. They're going to be running for office. And there is going to be a Democrat candidate running against them that's going to try to say all the right things, but they're still going to give that devotion to Israel. Because you know who's going to be twisting that arm? It's old ramen noodles herself, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Miami-Dade County is going to be twisting that arm. You better give money to Israel. You better give money to Israel. Now I'm hungry. Now I want some ramen noodles. But anyways, that's one of the biggest issues that we have here in Florida is that Florida is not Florida first. DeSantis is not Florida first. And a Democrat that gets in office won't be Florida first. Let's continue on. Israel has received $5 billion in financing from public and private U.S. investors since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. By the way, always regard, look, let me tell you guys something. It is not a war. A war denotes that there are two equal opposing sides. There is not a war. This is a Holocaust. And you have the Palestinian resistance has been fighting against what Israel has been doing for well over 75 years, since 1948, meaning that this is a genocide. This is a Holocaust, because they have been killing and murdering and massacring hundreds of thousands of Palestinians throughout the entire time. And it is estimated that there are now well over 400,000 Palestinians that have been murdered in Gaza. And we ain't even talking about the West Bank. And they're being systematically starved right now. And our tax dollars that we pay in Florida are going to whom? They're going to baby killers so that they can have their free education and healthcare. What about the kids? What about the kids? Exactly. Oh, we're so busy giving them billions of dollars. I thought you cared about the kids. I thought it was all about the kids. Look, some of these people in Florida, they're so focused on wanting to take rainbow flags out of a classroom, but they don't care about the lives of the little brown kids that's getting bombed into oblivion because our tax dollars are actually going to kill them. They're more afraid of a white dude from Brevard County wearing a wig and heels reading to kids than to some pedo that has been caught trying to traffic children in our own borders, and then ran off because he actually works right under Netanyahu in cybersecurity. They care more about a drag queen than they do about that guy. They care more about the people that laugh about how many children that they murdered. They care more about giving them money. They don't care about us. Hell, Florida doesn't even care about Jewish people. They don't. If you're Jewish and you live in Florida, the Republicans and the Democrats do not give a damn about you, because they will put your life in danger if the corporations can make $1 billion. And guess what? They're making that money hand over fist from Israel. Israel doesn't care about Jewish people. I said what I said. Israel does not care about Jewish people. If they did, they wouldn't put you in harm's way. And yet, here you are. It says state and local governments make up 1.7 billion of that overall figure. Bonds are fixed income securities purchased by investors to lend the government money, which is repaid at a set interest rate over a specific period. Proceeds from the bonds return to Israel as a surplus budgetary fund that can be used to offset the cost of its military campaigns. So this is what Florida is doing. This is a deeply sick and unholy alliance that is using our taxpayer funds to murder people. And if you care really about kids, you should be against this. If you really care about Floridians, you should be against this. Israel's war is Florida's new investment. Florida is poised to eliminate longstanding guardrails limiting local investment and increasingly risky Israeli bonds that help finance the country's war efforts. Look at this. So even out the lever, they're saying, well, you know what? In fact, we're not even going to go by the rating anymore. We're just going to make it so that there's no rating needed because we want to make sure that Israel gets that money. Lives of people be damned. It says the Florida's bill, which was brought to the legislature by one of the state's wealthiest counties and home base of President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort, Palm Beach, which is facing a lawsuit from its own residents for sinking 15% of its savings portfolio in debt-issued Israeli bonds, making the county the world's largest investor in Israeli bonds. The only foreign bonds that localities in Florida can invest in by law are from Israel. Outside of direct military assistance to Israel from the federal government, bond purchases have become a key node for U.S. states and localities to provide billions of taxpayer dollars to Israel, particularly during the Israel-Hamas war, not a war, following the October 7th attacks. The main broker for Israeli bonds, which operates on behalf of the Israeli government, lobbied for the first of this kind legislation, according to records reviewed by the Lever. And so we actually saw this part. So it says, because of the downgrades, Palm Beach and other counties investing in Israel, including Miami-Dade, would be in violation of local investment policies for any future Israeli bond purchases, which mandate an A rating for Israeli bond purchases. Those restrictions will be wiped away by the new bill, which passed unanimously through the Florida legislature in April and now awaits signing by DeSantis before the end of the legislative session this month. And they said, from Michael Omerman says, this bill is specifically designed to create an exemption for Israel, just like the U.S. government has in lots of other areas where Israel would otherwise run afoul of U.S. law. It says another example Omerman cited was the federal law that prohibits U.S. aid to security forces committing human rights abuses, which human rights organizations have documented at the hands of the Israeli military. I think it's referring to the Leahy law. It says Florida legislation can have widespread financial implications, according to municipal financial experts. It says this is definitely a first. That's from Justin Marlowe. It says, I've not seen any attempt to do some sort of legislative carve out for this sort that we're talking about here. It says there's paving the way for a big shift of behavior on the part of states and localities. It says since the conflict with Israel and Hamas, says Israel has received a record-setting influx of $5 billion of financing. So here's the problem, right? It says Israeli bonds have successfully convinced numerous state governments, including Louisiana, Indiana, New Jersey, and New Mexico, to undo longstanding rules banning them from purchasing foreign government bonds. Israel bonds have also gotten county and governments to ease remaining local investment restrictions to foreign issued debt. So if you take a look at this is egregious. And it's not just limited to red states. This is also blue states, right? How they are consistently pushing to give more money to Israel on a state and municipal level. And people say, well, Israel is controlling the United States. And really and then some will say that America, the United States, is controlling Israel. When in reality, Israel and the United States are really being ran by the parasite class. Because what is Israel doing? They're attacking Gaza, which, according to UN reports, Gaza has, millions of tons of liquefied natural gas. Natural gas reserves underground. Off the coast of Gaza, there is millions of barrels of oil that could be extracted, and they want to clear the area so that they can take over the land. They also have a real estate opportunity that they want to have there so that they can build up residential areas so that they can cater more. The occupation that Israel is doing is just gentrification on steroids. That's what it is. It's ethnic cleansing. It's a Holocaust. It's a genocide, but it's to gentrify the area so that the Palestinians are no longer there, so that the billionaire parasite class can extract the resources out of the area. It was never about actually protecting people. And you're using the Israelis to do it under the guise of religion, under the guise of them needing protection. This is where we're at, folks. So this is why when we're like, well, wait, why are we sending all this money? And by the way, Florida is a state where we don't have a state income tax. So therefore, every penny that we have, we need, because we don't have a state income tax. And that money that could go to other services for those of us in this state is being given to Israel. That money could go to a lot of other things. It can go to infrastructure. But no, they just want to give it away to a country that actually has free healthcare and free college, that are massacring people while they're illegally occupying the land of those people. So this is why it's important to focus on leaving both parties and doing mutual aid, because ultimately we all have to wake up and realize that neither party cares about us. DeSantis doesn't care about you. If we ever get a Democrat governor, that governor won't care about us. The Florida legislator, none of them care about us. This is why we have to come together, because they are organized. So in order to combat this atrocity, we have to be organized. But yeah, if you're a Floridian and you're seeing this and you're not mad, something's wrong. You should be pissed. All right, go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much to everybody for staying for that. All right, so let's get into the comments in the chat. Oh, Leroy says, I saw those Cringe, I stand with Israel license plates. Yup. I got the email. Wait, I think I got another email. Let me see. Let me check. I had got another email about that stupid stand with Israel license plate. Let me see. I know it's in here. Yep. Yep. Here you go. Yep. They sent me an email saying, "Oh, you should." Florida stands for email. Stands for email. Stands with Israel. You guys should get this license plate. That's the horrible part about all this. You know, it's sick. Sela says, why wouldn't the original retirement home for Zionists not be funding Israel would be their question. Fire Repo says, that man in the video had me in tears and JB making me smile now just listening to his giggle. Being in community is needed for this hellscape. Oh, yeah. I didn't want you to be in tears. You know, but I'm glad I'm able to make you laugh a little bit. But the thing is, we have to confront the system and what it does. But we also have to confront the grotesque mindset that it instills in us. And we have to purge that. We have to be honest with ourselves. And sometimes that honesty is uncomfortable. It is. But then once we confront it and we try to do what we can to purge it, we just become better people afterwards, you know? History is not comfortable. And it's just like how there was a ton, like, remember like 3 or 4 years ago, how a lot of people, especially a lot of white Americans, were complaining about critical race theory, right? And they were basically saying, oh, we don't want our kids to feel guilty that they're white and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, first of all, if they're feeling some type of guilt, sit with it. Sit with it. And you're going to realize, number one, that first of all, a hit dog will holler. Secondly, let that guilt drive you to dismantle the system. Let it be a driver. Third of all, some of those ancestors that did those horrible things to our ancestors are also our ancestors. How many of us Black Americans, how many of us freedmen have a little bit of European in us? A lot of us do. Why do we have European in our blood? That means that some of those ancestors that did those atrocious things are our ancestors too. So therefore, we have to confront that as well. So therefore, it's not just on you. We also have to confront it. But it's harming us while other groups are getting positively affected. Or it's not harming them because of their immutable characteristics, whereas it's harming us because of ours. But we all have to deal with that. We all have to deal with the horrible history of what some of our ancestors have done. A lot of us freedmen, we have a slave holder as an ancestor. It is. That's the truth. The freedmen in the comments. How many of y'all have done a DNA family ancestry thing, right? And then you find out, oh well, I got some Norwegian in me, I got some Welsh in me, I got some English in me, I got some German in me, I got some French. And then you find out that your great grandma was mulatto. She was biracial. Why? Or your great granddaddy was biracial or mulatto, as they put it. Why? Y'all know why? We all watch Roots. So, you know, we all have to confront it. And, you know, we all have to deal with it. We just have to deal with it in different sectors, but it must be dismantled. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Leroy says they have paid leave. I forgot about that one, too. Yep. Oh, yeah. Thanks for reminding me of this, Sean. He says, I knew both parties were trash when the Florida Democratic Party chose Biden instead of hearing out other primary candidates first. Yup. Florida actually canceled their primary just so that they can keep, I almost said Donald Trump, Freudian slip, Joe Biden as the nominee. We literally had 3 Democratic Party candidates that were running for the Democratic primary last year. We had Dean Phillips, Marianne Williamson, and Cenk Uygur. We had them. We literally had candidates for a primary. And Florida said, nope. They're not actually for the people. They don't even want to practice democracy. Edward says there are 2 reasons why Bibi is so unpopular in Israel. It's because they want the prime minister to release their hostages, and the people feel that he is not genocidal enough. That's sick. Yep. He's also applying the Hannibal Directive. And he says, JB, you're basically saying that the U.S. corporations want the Israeli government to wipe out the Palestinians for their resources. Yeah. Basically. I just always want to do more help while trying not to drown myself. I'm gonna say this with love and with great care because you're a comrade and I want you to be okay. One of the issues that this system does is that they give us internalized capitalism. And internalized capitalism, what does that do? Even when we try to do things like mutual aid and helping out others, we feel like we have to do it ourselves. We use individualism to help our neighbors. No, baby. We can't save the world on our own. We cannot be that superhero. Superheroes don't exist. The real heroes are the people that actually come together. So many hands make the load light. Join hands with others and try to do things collectively together. Don't let it fall all on your shoulders. Okay? I'm proud of you for doing what you're doing. It is important that we do not let it fall all on just our shoulders. We have to purge that internalized capitalism out of our minds and hearts, because it's going to tell us that you need to individually do this and not pull other people together in order to help. This is a potluck, baby. You're not the host of a banquet. This is a potluck. You bring your dish, I'll bring my dish. This person brings napkins and forks. This other person brings some hamburger meat. This other person brings a fruit salad. You know what I mean? The other person brings potato. Well, make sure they're responsible in making the potato salad because they have to make the potato salad right. I don't play about my potato salad. You better make it right. But choose the right person for the potato salad. Roger says Buffalo soldiers protected white settlers from indigenous tribes as they expanded into tribal Western territory. Ugh. Yeah. That's the harsh truth of our history too. Like, Buffalo soldiers participated in the expansion, the settler colonialism of this country against natives. We also have to wrestle with that too. It's sad, you know. History is not pretty, you know. Thank you for that, Roger. Appreciate it. And Jimmy says, I have a cousin with an unknown white American U.S. soldier father. Ooh, yeah. All right. So I'm going to look at this just really quick. I can't look at the entire thing due to the sake of time, but I owe Roger. I owe him. He wanted me to take a look at this. So I'm going to get into this about property tax. So, all right, let's take a look.
Here's a little pet issue of mine, which I said, I wish I had the time to write this up into a monologue, but I'm going to do my best. So there is a growing effort on the right to, quote, abolish property taxes. I want to say at the top, I sympathize. Everybody hates property taxes. Here in the state of Virginia, actually where I live, they even tax your car. You know, every year you have to pay your annual car tax. And it's one of the most unpopular things that people ever have to deal with. But I want to really dig into this and tell people why it is actually a massive giveaway to the old. And if anything, it needs to be reversed. So let's put this up there on the screen from Marjorie Taylor Greene. She says recently, quote, "Hi, we need to completely abolish property tax. It forces us to, quote, pay rent to the government on property that we own. But if we don't pay property tax, the property that we own gets taken away. That should never happen in a free country." She says, secondly, health insurance is a giant scam. I agree, but let's stick with the property tax thing because this is actually becoming policy. Let's put the next one, please, on the screen. Ron DeSantis is now proposing no property taxes in the state of Florida. And actually, it's Florida, Ohio, and many other Republican states that want to eliminate property tax. Vivek Ramaswamy has apparently said something similar. The more I looked into this, again, emotionally, I actually do understand. Everybody hates property tax. It's one of the things that's included in your mortgage. Even if you finally pay off your house, you have to continue to do it. The more I actually started to look into it, not only in what it funds, but the way that seniors are the ones who are the most benefit, not only of the property tax themselves, which is paid for services, but get exemptions. I was like, wait, no, this is a massive giveaway to the old. And it's an inversion of how policy should be. So let me put this up on the screen and then we can talk. I did a lot of this research. This was ChatGPT, thankfully. And I was like, how much property tax exemption already exists for old people? So in Florida, you get this thing called the homestead deduction. That's for everybody. It's for your primary residence, which is off of your assessed value. But seniors who are 65 plus and lower income, by the way, that low income is a very different definition than what I would think of low income, you get an additional $50,000 exemption. In Texas, you get something called the regular school tax exemption. And then for seniors, you get an extra $10,000 off of school district taxes, plus school taxes are frozen at the age of 65. The theory basically for property tax and the anti-property tax movement for a lot of old people is, hey, we're older, our kids are grown, so why should we have to pay for schools? I think this is preposterous because I'm forced to pay Social Security and Medicare like everybody else with FICA. I could get hit by a bus on the day I turned 64 and 364 days and get no Social Security. That doesn't mean that I shouldn't have to pay it for my entire life.
Right.
So their theory is that we have to pay for their retirement, which by the way is pegged to inflation, but they get property tax, school tax frozen, and now they want to eliminate it entirely, which are city services, which again, who's calling 911 for an ambulance all the time? It's old people, okay? And these people want to opt out of that and shift the tax burden to the consumption of sales tax, which would actually be a massive giveaway to them. Not even worse. Let me just continue the rant.
Wait. Roger, I'm gonna get you for this one. You got me agreeing with Sagar? Damn it, Roger. With Sagar and Jetty. God, I'm getting hot. You got me agreeing with Sagar and Jetty. Fuck me sideways. A cactus dildo. Damn it. Let's move on. Shit.
Is it would mean that their primary residence, they have no incentive to sell, which actually locks them even more so into housing stock, giant McMansions, which for two people, which in my opinion, rightfully should go to people with younger houses. Now, I'm not saying they should be forced to sell, but to say that, well, maybe I am, but
oh my Lord! The hell! Don't you dare make me say, hold up, let me put myself on full screen. Don't you dare make me say Comrade Sagar. Don't. Roger, I'm gonna get you so good for this one. No wonder why you've been pressuring me to play this. Damn it, now I want to hear more. Shoot. Roger. Damn it.
Like, I'm not saying there's
time to move on, Grandma.
I'm not saying that we should be forced to sell. Wink, wink. But the idea that you should be that the government should provide you massive amounts of services, free retirement, free healthcare under Medicare, but you don't have to pay for my kids' school taxes. Get out of here. And now you actually want to shift the local burden to more so to the consumers rather than the elderly people who, again, get inflation-pegged free money from the government. And now under the big, beautiful bill, you get a tax-free income for 88%. I just think it's one of those where it's a total abdication by the boomer generation. They're like, oh, we're done with the schools, so we don't have to pay for them. Well, you know, what if I'm done with you? Why do I have to pay for your health care? You know, one.
Okay, so hang on. Let me say something. Okay, all right. So here's my thing. The whole argument of, gosh, I'm gonna sound like Saga right now. The whole thing about, oh well, I don't have any kids anymore, so therefore I shouldn't have to pay taxes for school. You know, you're not paying taxes just for your kids when you talk about taxes for school. First of all, property taxes shouldn't have to pay for school. It should be a centralized location where it should be centralized, where all taxes should go to schools, and it should be equitable according to the needs of the school per student, and it should not be dependent on property taxes, period. Now I'm going to get that out of the way. That's how I think. Now, but when it comes to paying property taxes for school, those students that are going there aren't just your kids. Those are also people that will be covering and taking care of you while you're old. So you're literally paying for the education of the doctors, the nurses, the people that run your government, the people that are running the businesses that you attend, you're literally also paying for them as well when you pay your property tax. Now, I will say this. I do think that people should pay property tax one time, and that's it. And it should not be tied to education. It should be, a tax should be tied just in general from the government to fund schools. It should not be tied to education, because then you create tiers in different public schools, right? There should not be any tiers. They should all be equitable and equal at all, across the board. The problem is that we don't have it that way. And so this is why there's a lot of schools, especially predominantly Black and brown schools, that are lower in quality. So therefore, they're not getting as good an education as, say, ones that are more affluent. Like in the city of Orlando, this is why Jones High School is down here, and they don't get as much money as Dr. Phillips. Because Dr. Phillips High, DP actually gets more funding, because the property taxes are higher, because you have higher earning people that live in the Dr. Phillips area. Just like you have higher earning people living, I forgot which high school is out there in Winter Park, but you also have Winter Park, people who live out in Winter Park that are paying higher property taxes because their property values are higher, because they're more affluent. And then so, the kids that go to Oak Ridge or the kids that go to Jones, guess what? They're not going to have as good of an education. So I think that the education should be paid across the board and not should be dependent on property tax. But at the same time, I think property taxes should be owed, but only one time. So let's say you have a 30-year mortgage, right? Now, if you want to pay all the property tax at once, you can pay the property tax at once. Or if you want to pay between your first mortgage and your last payment of mortgage, once you finally own the home, you can pay the property tax in installments. But once that mortgage is paid off, you should not have to pay property tax. And then also on top of that, I'm also a big proponent of nobody should go without when it comes to the main resources, utilities, if the elderly, housing, food, all these different things, they should not have to go without at all. So therefore, if they are elderly, but we're still taxing them after they've owned their home, well, then now you're taking money away from them, and a lot of them are on fixed incomes. And so then you're putting them in harm's way. Something tells me that Roger's typing it up a response in the DMs right now. And he's probably agreeing with me on a few of those points. Damn. Okay.
% of all federal spending is on boomer dialysis. I'm not joking. 1% of the entire federal budget is on dialysis for obese boomers with kidney disease.
I'm sorry. What? Wait. What? On obese boomers. By the way, not every person on dialysis is obese. So now Sagar's talking out his ass. So now I'm going to say that no, because not everybody that has kidney issues, by the way, I was on dialysis for almost 18 years, and it wasn't because of me being obese. It wasn't. I was actually diagnosed with nephrotic syndrome when I was a little kid. It is a juvenile kidney disease that I was just born with. And so therefore, I suffered from ESRD by the time I hit 23 years old. So no, not all of us. Some of us get kidney cancer. Some people who may have high blood pressure are not obese. And then they may end up on dialysis because they have high blood pressure, or they may have heart disease. Or it could be other different issues that may have happened. Maybe they had type 1 diabetes. Maybe they caught type 2 diabetes. Who knows? But they may not be obese. So that, you're wrong for that, Saga. Don't paint people with a broad brush like that. Roger says, James, you don't agree with Saga. Saga agrees with us. Thank you for making the blow a little bit softer on me. Oh, geez.
It's one of those where, and listen, I'm pro Medicare. If anything, we should go after the healthcare companies that jack up that spending. I'm not saying we should take it away from you, but you can't abdicate your responsibility to the younger generation. And that's what all of us is. It's like, we literally have a socialist system right now for boomers. The more I'm looking into this property tax thing, I did not realize it's a massive giveaway to the elderly. And it.
Hold on, wait a minute. But I will say this, okay? Homelessness rates are going up significantly for boomers. So is it really a socialist giveaway? No, it's not. And by the way, at the same time, nobody should have to go without housing, healthcare, education. So therefore, all the things that these boomers get, shouldn't all of us get? I don't know, but that, I'm going to leave, this link in the chat for anybody that wants to watch and continue, because I really have to get going. I have to finish this. But yeah. And by the way, my grandmother lost her house because she was late on her property tax. So what about her? Exactly. So the home that me and my family were supposed to inherit is gone. Somebody got the family home and now own it, and they kicked out my grandmother and only gave her 3 weeks with my bedridden grandfather, and they were in their 80s, and they kicked them out. And she owned the home for over 50 years. And she lost it because she was late on paying her property tax. No, not really. Sila. No, I don't agree with capitalist thought. But I mean, he does make some points, but yeah, I think Sagar agreeing with us on that is kind of interesting. It's like, what? But yes, thank you very much for that, Roger. I appreciate it. Let's get into the final segment that I want to get into. And yeah, let's make it a good one. Did you guys like the stream? Go ahead and like it. Do it for me. All right. All right. So, of course, we talked to Shaquille Sunflower. That was a great conversation. And then we talked about DeSantis being Israel first. But now we're going to be talking about private equity doom. What is private equity doing? Well, they are making us unequal. Private equity, public inequity. Ooh, this is going to be bad. private equity is a stain on this country that I think should be banned from many places, especially in regards to industries that are tied to our very survival. Private equity is ruining the lives of millions of Americans. And we're told that's just how businesses ran. But should we take that? Should we accept that? I don't think so. But unfortunately, that's what's going on. And so one of the things I want to do is I want to get into what private equity is, and then we will move into what private equity is doing as far as our healthcare, what they've been doing to businesses, and how they are affecting everyday Americans like you and me. So let's take a look at the explanation of private equity, and then we'll get into this. So thank you very much for this from Breaking Points and James Lee reporting.
I do think it's a bubble. And so I think we're going to see mass layoffs and premature deployment of AI to keep these companies alive. I think that there's going to be a lot of unemployment to come.
Private equity has taken over nearly every corner of the economy. But is it also the next big bubble? My name is James Lee, and this is Beyond the Headlines on Breaking Points. Private equity is a type of investment where firms pool money from wealthy individuals and institutions to buy companies, usually outside of the public market. Over the past many decades, private equity has promised outsized returns by taking companies private, loading them with debt, improving its operational efficiency, and selling them later at a profit. But with rising interest rates and frozen exit markets, that model could be under serious stress. Major institutional investors of private equity, including the Yale and Harvard endowment funds, are now quietly selling their private equity stakes, and often at deep discounts. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is reportedly finalizing an executive order that would allow 401k retirement plans to invest in private equity. Now, is that a sign of growing access, or are institutional investors just looking for someone else to sell to? And if so, is private equity the next big bubble that could lead to the next financial crisis? To help us break all of this down, I'm joined today by Rachel Wasserman, a corporate lawyer, former investment banker, and author of the Private Equity Playbook, How Buyout Firms Extract Rather Than Build Value and What to Do About It. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Rachel.
Thanks for having me, James.
Absolutely. Now, before we get into the risks and the potential bubble that we're seeing here, I first want to start with how private equity actually works, because you've been there, you've been behind the scenes, you know how the sausage is made. So for the viewers who don't follow finance, don't know much about it, what is the typical private equity playbook? How do they make their money? And what are the current risks to their business model right now?
Yeah, thanks, James. So I think it's first important to dispel some misconceptions about private equity and some clarification of language. So private equity can mean a lot of different things. Private equity, at its most general term, is just money that's invested in assets that are not publicly traded on the stock market. There's nothing inherently wrong about private equity, full stop. But the buyout sector, which is the one that buys out whole companies at a time, it is the largest sector of private equity firms, and candidly is the most problematic. So it used to be that in order to grow a business, you invested capital, and like a tree or like a plant, it grows and everybody gets to prosper from the fruit of that tree. Private equity figured out, hold on a second, we can actually eat the bark of the tree, and that will sustain us better. We can actually extract value from the business by loading on lots of debt, by selling off real estate and other valuable assets and distributing it back to shareholders. They figured out how to circumvent the growth on capital from, instead of being patient and taking risks, to just extraction. And that's unsustainable.
So what's the situation right
So according to the explanation here, you can say private equity essentially is instead of consuming from what the company creates, it's consuming the company itself. And then as you consume the company itself, you consume it at a profit, but then the company also generates more profit and becomes more valuable. So then you're basically trimming the fat while it still grows in value. And that's an unsustainable model, because as you're consuming the company, what ends up happening? Well, benefits get cut, jobs get lost. And so it ends up hurting the workers really more towards the beginning instead of the end. And then also quality also goes down too. This is why there was the sandwich place, Jersey Mike's subs, right? Everybody was always talk about Jersey Mike's subs being really, really great. Well, they said, private equity bought them. So now what's going to happen is that Jersey Mike's is now going to start looking a little bit more like Subway. Because guess what? If you go to Subway, they're only going to give you a sliver of meat now. They're not going to give you what they used to. And Jersey Mike's used to be good. But now, because private equity, they want to trim that fat. Now they're going to make it even less, because now Jersey Mike's is now consuming Jersey Mike's. That didn't sound right, but hey, this is a family show. Let's continue.
now with private equity? Because I'm reading that they are sitting on record levels of unsold assets. I believe Bain cited $3.6 trillion. But at the same time, we're also seeing record levels of what they call dry powder, meaning money that's yet to be invested. So why are we not seeing more exits? Like, what is going on? Is there something off with these valuations? Can you explain that situation? Because I think that's a thing that a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah, so the buyout private equity model is predicated on a few factors. So you're buying a business and you're going to hold it for 5 to 7, 10 years. And so that means you're locked in, okay? Means that within that period of time, if something bad happens, you have to be able to weather that storm. And a lot of the way the leveraged buyout works is you're making those predictions before you enter the asset. So in order for private equity to be successful, you need low interest rates for that cheap debt. You need incoming capital willing to continue to invest, so viable exit, so the ability to sell that business, and a growing economy. So you need cheap debt, the ability to exit, and a growing economy. Now, anybody that bought a business 10 years ago didn't account for COVID, or let's say even 5 years ago. Didn't account for COVID. They didn't account for interest rate increases, the Trump economy, and what's going on with tariffs. And so that has created pressures on these portfolio companies. So they have variable interest rates. So that means that the amount of interest that they are paying goes up. And that means the company has less cash to deal with its problems. So really what this is doing is it's shrinking valuations. It's making these businesses worth less. And now when I said that they need to continue to be able to grow and exit these businesses, that's a foundation of this business model, okay? So we know that there's enough dry powder out there. So dry powder is money that these private equity firms have already agreed to deploy. They are contractually obligated to go and spend this money and buy businesses. But it's aging, which means they're not finding the opportunities they want in the market, okay? But on the flip side, we have more than enough companies for all of that dry powder. So if the buyers and sellers are there, but they can't make deals, the necessary conclusion there is a valuation distortion, because you have enough businesses to be sold to enough money out there to buy it. And so, people are saying the market's slow. Well, no, there's enough money out there and there are enough businesses, but they can't agree on a price. And so now we're seeing financial engineering and gymnastics to justify, in my opinion, these overvaluations.
So it looks like we're venturing on another 2008 crisis, kind of similar to the subprime mortgage bubble. And so as we get closer and closer to that, if you get anybody, y'all are old enough, remember what happened in 2008. If that happens now, expect to see a lot of pain. Expect to see a lot of it happening. And now, as we can see, what James Lee just reported on is that now they're trying to take some of the buyers and put the money on the buyers being people with 401ks. But if there are losses, what ends up going down? 401k investments. So then a lot of people may not be able to retire like they wanted to because that money is now getting lost from businesses that have been devalued. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share that link to that video, and we're going to get into why this is harming us, especially in regards to healthcare, because there is now private equity that is buying up hospitals. So I want to get into that. And we will jump. Ooh. And it is gruesome. And this is really going to harm Americans as this continues to grow.
Child should ever die because those bastards closed our hospital. It's quite frankly tragic what these investors have done.
There's sadness and anger about the loss of this critical community resource.
There's actually a sign up there right in front right now that says emergency department permanently closed. Anyone here with an emergency should call 911.
What you're looking at was one of the busiest hospitals in a county of more than 500,000 people, right outside one of America's biggest cities. Last month, the hospital closed after its parent company went bankrupt. But this wasn't any ordinary bankruptcy.
Moments after Governor Shapiro wrapped up a news conference, a family showed up at the closed hospital saying a baby wasn't breathing.
Prospect never treated us like a hospital. They treated us like a business.
What happened at Crozier Chester Medical Center in Pennsylvania is happening all across the country. Private equity is buying hospitals, loading them up with debt, and then shutting them down, all while investors cash out.
They don't have any skin in the game. They can take financial risks, but not have to pay the price for them.
I hope for you that you never have a hospital close in your county. I hope for you that private equity never comes into your county to take over your health care.
We can't believe that we're not going to be able to help these people anymore. And somebody has to do something because these people deserve it.
It's about to get wild, y'all. Buckle up.
Crozier Chester Medical Center, located in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, was the busiest ER in the area, treating tens of thousands of patients each year. It was the main hospital in a system that, until 2022, was made up of 4 hospitals.
We were a really robust hospital and we were busy all the time. Those people trusted us. They came every day and let us take care of their families.
But in the mid-2010s, the Crozier Health System was in financial trouble.
Crozier was a nonprofit system that was struggling because they're a safety net hospital system. They have a disproportionate number of people who are covered by Medicaid or uninsured. And so these types of hospitals, they often have very thin margins.
So in 2016, Crozier's nonprofit board approved a sale to a California company called Prospect Medical Holdings. Unlike Crozier, Prospect was a for-profit system, and its principal owner was Leonard Green and Partners, a private equity firm based in Los Angeles.
Some of the companies they've owned over the years include Joann's and a number of other just big box stores or chain restaurants.
We were told that Crozier was struggling financially. And so, what were we going to do?
So just to let you guys know, this area is in Chester, Pennsylvania. Now, one of the aspects about Chester is that Chester, Pennsylvania is 71% Black. So, and if we know, racial disparities, well, it's one of those hospitals where they help mostly the people who are economically displaced. So therefore, they're not bringing in as much money as a more profit-driven hospital that focuses a lot of times on, more affluent people. And so these hospitals, their margins are much lower. And so they're not able to make as much in order to stay afloat. And so that's the sad part about it. And this is why somebody like myself is against, private ownership of hospitals. This is why I am a proponent of a nationalized healthcare system, because hospitals should not be closing. We should not be having we shouldn't be having less hospital beds. We should be having more because our population has grown. But unfortunately, because of this system, because they want to make more profit. And also, we got to remember these corporations that make these medical devices, like for instance, how much does the MRI machine cost? And then how much does the CHOP hospital charge you to get an MRI? Right? How much does a hospital charge for a CT scan? How much does a hospital charge for an X-ray? How much does a hospital charge for all these different tests? And how much are these medical devices manufactured for? Hell, just even, a pump, for your IV. How much does that cost? How much does the company cost to make it? Yeah, companies like Philips and Braun and many others that are making these medical devices, these diagnostic machines, and they're making hand over fist. So let's continue on.
Being bought by a for-profit system didn't fix Crozier's problems. Instead, they got worse. In 2022, Prospect closed 2 of the 4 Delaware County hospitals it owned, and conditions at Peggy's hospital deteriorated.
Pretty quickly, we started to see the supplies change, right? They started using different vendors. The quality was not what it was before. And little by little, we had less and less staff.
Well, hundreds of workers at Crozier Health will soon have to find a new job.
Like all of those support systems that really made us be able to do the great job that we were always to do in caring for our patients, we started to notice all of that start to go away.
So what's the incentive for a private equity company that owns retail stores and restaurants to get in the business of struggling hospitals?
Instead of putting money into these systems, they're actually taking money out of the systems.
In 2018, just 2 years after buying Crozier Health, Prospect took out a $1.1 billion loan and then sent nearly half of it straight to their investors while Crozier continued to suffer.
It's fundamentally extractive. Even among private equity industry folks, it's a controversial way to generate a return on an investment because it adds absolutely no value to the company in question. And the private equity firm is not on the hook for any of that debt, but they can reap the rewards.
Leonard Green sold Prospect in 2019, but Prospect and its hospitals were still on the hook for the debt. In order to pay down that debt, Prospect sold the real estate of its hospitals, including Crozier, to an Alabama company called Medical Properties Trust, or MPT. These deals are known as sale-leaseback transactions.
What MPT does is it partners with health systems like Prospect to buy up their real estate and then rent it back. I like to call it a hospital landlord because that's really what it is. Most of the time, the revenue that's generated from these one-time sales of the real estate, it doesn't go back into the hospital. It's being pocketed by investors.
And like a tenant, Crozier had to start paying rent, $35 million a year.
And people wonder why hospital bills are so damn high. See, a lot of people talk about healthcare insurance, right? But we also need to talk about who owns the hospitals, who owns the dialysis centers, who owns the infusion centers, who owns the medical device manufacturers, right? Who builds the hospital beds? Who builds the wheelchairs? Who builds the walkers? See, we got to talk about all of it. Because healthcare is literally being paywalled. And now they're making it so that you can't even have a hospital in your area. It depends on how much you make. And depending on if you won the lottery and being born in a particular family with a particular income, you have to exist in the right zip code. So this is the terrible part. And I think this is why it's so important that we have to focus on not just having a single payer healthcare insurance, because even if we had single payer, the government will be on the hook to pay these hospitals that are privately owned, and they will be just sucking more money out from the public. This is why I think we should have nationalized public ownership of hospitals, as well as other clinics and outpatient centers. Because you get situations like this.
Last year, the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office sued Prospect and Leonard Green for mismanagement and breach of contract, saying the company, quote, broke their promise with years of neglectful, self-serving practices that have put lives at risk. This January, Prospect filed for bankruptcy, and within months, it closed its last hospitals in Delaware County, including the one where Peggy worked.
I'm going to tell you honestly that we all believed up until that very last day in April that we would be saved and they would keep Crozier open because of how desperately needed it is in that community. And it was like someone kicked me right in the stomach. I remember feeling this like, how can this end? Nothing will haunt me like those days prior to closing that inpatient psychiatric unit, where I felt like I was herding patients out like cattle, where I felt like nobody cared about them.
On May 15th, the stakes of the closure took a dire turn.
When a woman came in her vehicle, screeching her brakes right behind the press conference, screaming at the crowd for us to help her with her baby who needed care. She took this baby to Crozier not knowing that it was closed.
They just called and said that she wasn't breathing, and my heart just dropped.
She was taken by ambulance to Nemours Children's Hospital in Wilmington, a 20-minute drive away, where she was given a diagnosis.
I'm going to tell you something right now. Having to go to a hospital further away, which is 20 minutes away, that's a matter of life and death for some people. I remember back in February when I had to go to the hospital because I had 103 temperature, and come to find out I had a bad staph infection that I basically almost went into septic shock for the second time in my life. And I asked to go to a different hospital that was a little bit further away. And they said, no, you're too unstable for us to take you to a hospital you want to choose to go to. We have to take you to the closest one. So what if the hospital closest to me had just shut down that day? There would have been more of a risk to my life. My temperature probably would have went up to 104 or 105. I could have died. Now imagine an infant that stopped breathing. Do you know how long it takes for you to have permanent brain damage of no oxygen? What is it? I think permanent brain damage starts around, I think it's past 60 seconds of no oxygen. 6 minutes. Yeah, I'm sorry. 6 minutes. 6 minutes of no oxygen to the brain causes permanent brain damage. So imagine 20 minutes away. And this woman is driving because ambulances are way too expensive, right? So she's driving to make sure that her baby gets to the hospital because her baby can't stop breathing. Kind of hard to do that while you're driving to make sure the baby, to do chest compressions and making sure you keep blowing air into the baby in order to make sure. It's kind of hard to do that while driving. And so also the ambulances are privately owned, right? And on top of that, the hospitals are privately owned. So then when the hospitals go down because of private equity, then guess what happens? It's literally putting our lives at risk for who? For leeches, for parasites. Parasites. Let's continue on.
6 children, and no mother should have to drive up and hope that there's someone there to save their child and frantically hand their baby who's not breathing over to someone to save when there's a hospital right here and it's empty.
What's happened to Crozier is this natural outcome of what happens when we allow markets to dictate access and quality of healthcare. It's not profitable to provide healthcare at a hospital with a disproportionate number of people on Medicaid. And if we don't want that to be the case anymore, we're going to need to find a way to finance healthcare that it doesn't allow investors to swoop in and extract from these systems before they finally go under.
The impact of shutting down Crozier Chester Medical Center isn't limited to just Chester either. Since the hospital closures, the share of Delaware County residents who live more than 5 miles away from a hospital has nearly tripled. Emergency visits at one Delaware County hospital have increased more than 40%, and local officials have had to scramble to make up the loss of ambulance services Crozier provided to towns and boroughs.
What we are experiencing is the trickle-down effect of the loss of 4 hospitals in Delaware County, a county of over 500,000 people. Longer emergency department wait times, longer wait times for EMS, significant challenges getting appointments.
Minutes matter, whether you're having a stroke or a heart attack or you've been shot or stabbed or you can't breathe.
In June, the Pennsylvania House passed a bill backed by Governor Josh Shapiro.
Hang on, let me say this as well. If you have universal healthcare, that means you can have longer wait times. If you have universal healthcare, then you're going to have to wait months in order to be able to see a doctor. You were saying?
Or you can't breathe.
In June, the Pennsylvania House passed a bill backed by Governor Josh Shapiro that would ban sale-leaseback agreements and give the Attorney General new oversight powers over mergers and acquisitions involving hospitals and nursing homes.
Currently, the Attorney General's office finds out about it when we all do. There's provisions to look at it and decide, is this in the public interest?
The bill is now in the Republican-controlled Pennsylvania Senate.
And I hope lawmakers come together, Democrat and Republican, like the group we have assembled here today, and quickly pass this much-needed legislation, put it on my desk, and I will sign it into law.
It's kind of rich coming from Josh Shapiro because he doesn't have any love or support for the hospitals that were bombed by Israel. That's rich coming from you, Josh. Very rich. So you care about lives. You care about lives when it's politically convenient, but when it comes to actually challenging power, you don't want to do that. Yeah, we see. We know exactly who you are. Just want to make that point.
This year, more than a dozen bills have been filed across 9 states to address private equity in healthcare, including a ban on sale-leaseback transactions in Massachusetts and another restricting the corporatization of healthcare in Oregon. As corporate greed continues to infiltrate healthcare around the country at astonishing levels, we're left asking, how many more communities will pay the ultimate price?
Our health system is like a dangerous, windy road that's been engineered really poorly. And the legislation right now in Pennsylvania, if passed, that would be like putting guardrails up.
I blame private equity. I blame Prospect Medical. I blame Leonard Green. They came to Chester with this one intention in mind, was to take every bit of equity from us and to leave us bankrupt and to walk away.
As for Crozier, House Bill 1460 will be too late, but officials hope the hospital will eventually reopen in some form.
A hospital is where people go for care, and a hospital is where people go to be cured and to be saved. And to think that a company can come in and treat us like any other kind of business, that when you're done with us, throw us away. They have left people devastated. People have died. People will continue to die. They sold out this poor community for money. And that's something that I think can never happen again.
So that's what the system does. It sells you out because essentially your life is only worth a few dollars to them. Ultimately, they're willing to risk your life in order for them to have more money so that they can fly on their Gulfstream jets, or they can, have another yacht. And people like JB, what's the answer? A full nationalization of our healthcare industry. Healthcare should not be tied to profit at all, because it is a public good. We should see hospitals the same way we see libraries. I highly recommend all of you to, if you have not seen the movie John Q, I highly recommend that you guys watch it. You'll cry. You'll cry. But it's a great movie about how this healthcare system is sick and twisted. And I'll be honest with you, between Denzel Washington, Kimberly Elise, Anne Heche, Eddie Griffin, James Woods. There's so many amazing actors in that movie. So many. You honestly will be floored as to why there's not more outrage about this healthcare system. And by outrage, I mean people in the streets shutting things down so that we can actually have a better system for everybody. So should private equity be outlawed from healthcare? Yes. But it also should be outlawed from housing too. Healthcare, housing, education, utilities. It should be outlawed from those and then some. But private equity is just one of the grossest parts of capitalism. And what does that mean? Capitalism has to go. All right, everybody. Go ahead and do the damn thing. Give me a like. That was the final segment. Let's get into some comments in the chat. We'll get on with the get going on. All right. Let's check to see if we have any Rumble rants or any gift subs on Kick. Nothing yet. All right. We're good there. Also, let's check to see if we need Rumble rants. Looks like we're good on the Rumble side. All righty. And let's go into the general chat for the YouTube side. All right. Roger Meadow says, no, private equity bought Jersey Mike since we last reported. Hang on. You're not gonna like this, Roger. You're really not gonna like it. Yikes! I'm gonna show you. Ooh. It says Blackstone. You know the one that's buying all the houses? A private equity firm acquired a majority ownership stake in Jersey Mike's for approximately $8 billion in November 2024. A deal expected to close in early 2025. The partnership is intended to accelerate Jersey Mike's expansion, enhance its technology and digital presence, and its benefits its franchisees and customers. Jersey Mike's founder and CEO, Peter Cancoro, will retain significant equity stake and continue to lead the business. Yep. It says, say goodbye to the quality Jersey Mike's. Oh my gosh. Yep. Wow. I wonder, did it finally finish and go through? It doesn't say. I'm guessing it did already. Yeah. Here we go. Blackstone completes Jersey Mike's sub acquisition. Yep. Oh my gosh. Yep. Sorry, Raj. Ugh. Yeah. Jersey Mike's now going down the tubes. Edward says it's all about maximizing profits with private equity. Yep. Maximize profits. Chris C says their one and only duty is to shareholders, never workers, just people outright. Sela says, since we don't produce anything from scratch, we're selling the last of our infrastructure, hospitals, educational institutions, roads, bridges, public housing, and parks. Look, they're going to get to a point where even our interstate are going to be paid for by tolls. They're gearing up for all that. Watch. Edward says, investing in private equity is more riskier than stocks. No way should they be buying hospitals. Buy Repo says, this is the state I grew up in, where folks I grew up with did nada when the pipeline started taking property under eminent domain. Yep. Kill your Grigors. You got no notification. Are you subscribed to my Substack? Because I give notifications 30 minutes before I go live. I send it out via email. You get email notification. So you hear it straight from me. You don't have to depend on YouTube. It's a good thing. I get my own notifications. You see, Sela says 401ks was supposed to be a backup plan to government, private, business retirement plans, not the primary source of retirement. Social Security is supposed to better fund, not private equity. Yep. Cobra Commander says all roads lead to violent revolution. Yep. Let me see. Marlo says, I love to see everyone in the chat today. I'm 10 minutes behind because I'm at work and it's been a crazy day, but love y'all. And it's insane how hospitals are being used as ATMs for investors, basically. Yep. Wubba Cohen, good to see you. I'm doing good. I'm finishing up. All right. And let me check something real quick. Checkity check, check, check. Let me go here, and then I'll be on my way out because I'm hungry and I need some food. Roger says, now that contrasts with the conservative argument Sabrina the socialist made against property tax, with Sagar the conservative making the socialist argument. Keep in mind, one doesn't have children and the other one is just starting his family with his first child. With that said, who made the better argument, Sabrina the conservative or Sagar the socialist? Consider the checkmate question. As Brother Jay from X-Clan said, checkmate sucker, not a move, game over. Says, by the way, that's how you come to agreement between Sagar and Sabrina. Bring down, not eliminate, but bring down the cost of property taxes. Now, if you feel that the state is not proportionately financing your public school as opposed to those who don't need it as bad, then charter your own municipal public bank to close the gap. We talked about public banks. I like public banks. He said, like I said before, passing all these wonderful ballot measures, as I mentioned, the first thing that has to be done is making the citizen ballot initiative process easier. Like public financing a ballot measure, which is going to mean having a surplus to draw from to do matching funds. The second thing is to have a citizen ballot initiative amendment for a public bank statewide while allowing municipalities to charter their own. Sometimes when you want something, you have to make the soil fertile for the thing you want to nest. That means you got to add some manure. Said, let's take Reagan. People say that just because he came in and ran roughshod over FDR and LBJ policies, not realizing there was a whole decade before Reagan that made the soil fertile and built infrastructure that would allow him to come in and do that and do what did that we never pay attention to. For instance, Nixon's appointment of Justice Lewis Powell, author of the infamous Powell memo that sent us on a path towards Citizens United. He was a Democrat, by the way, as well as companies adopted and our government being okay with shareholders only having a responsibility to maximize profit, not take into consideration what effect their decisions have on us all. Instead, let the government absorb the loss. How this identifies with single payer and hospitals. In order to make single payer easier, first move hospitals, dialysis centers, nursing homes, clinics, urgent care, and other types of medical facility from the speculative market. Then outlaw private equity from operating in your state. Therefore, those facilities will then be able to look at healthcare as a social good rather than having to worry about maximizing profit. That automatically will bring costs down without ever introducing a single payer healthcare. Then charter public banks, state and local level to create a surplus in the local and state economy. Then after that surplus has had a chance to build over the years, introducing single payer healthcare, have a tax, baby income tax to help pay for it. Not a lot, but the surplus will be single payer healthcare. You won't have to have enormous surplus because you've already brought down the course by removing hospitals and such from the speculative market. Yeah, you got to lay the groundwork. You have to prep it before you can make it. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, agree. Craig Grigors says, I'm subbed on YouTube, but I'll sub to your Substack. Yeah. And then, once in a while, I'll write articles, in there too. So you got that too. So there's benefits there. All right, everybody. So I'm going to head on out. It is time for me to go. And look, there's going to be a clip that is going to premiere tomorrow. It's going to be tomorrow evening that I had with Justin Blake. Justin Blake is the uncle of Jacob Blake, who was shot by police about 4 years ago. He was shot and then paralyzed basically from the waist down. And so he is actually doing a mutual aid event in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so we're going to be talking about that, as well as activism. And his family has a rich history of doing activism work. So if you guys would like to, you guys can actually watch that tomorrow evening. It premieres at 9 p.m. Eastern on this channel. So you guys can always watch that there. You have that. Also, I haven't brought this up in a while, but it's getting rough out on these streets. Just to let you guys know, I am still raising funds to help me with post-kidney transplant expenses. So if you guys would like to, you guys can also help me with that. I am still raising funds to help me with post-kidney transplant expenses for things like medications, as well as transportation to my doctor's appointments, and testing, as well as being able to get things that I need in order to be able to survive post transplant. It's not the easiest thing because as people know, of course we don't have healthcare that's free at the point of service, as well as being on a fixed income as well. It also makes it difficult too. So I'll put the link inside the chat as well. But yes, that is what's going on with me. It's still a challenge. So if you guys would like to, you guys can also help me out with that. Honestly, I'm trying to protect this gift that was given to me. There's somebody that's no longer alive that helped me to have a better quality of life. So I want to make sure that I protect this gift at all costs. So if you guys can, I really appreciate it. And, you know, I still have hospital bills, things like that to help with, that I need help with. So thank you very much to everybody for helping out with that too. All right, everybody. So I'm going to head on out. And man, I should have picked out something funny to end with, because you know I like to end on a funny note, right? But today was one of those days where didn't, you know, it's kind of hard to do so. It's been really busy, but one of the things that I will do is I'll make sure to have something set up for next time, because, you know, I think it's best, you know, to always make sure that you end on something that is comical, you know, because I want people to you know, feel good, right? Because I don't want people to always feel like something is that we always have to, you know, have doom and gloom. You know what? Even though this is talking about something serious, I'm going to give a shout out to my sister. And I know she's probably going to show this tonight. But since I'm not showing anything until tomorrow, and she already posted it on Twitter, my sister Savvy Sabs, she's doing a documentary about gentrification in Boston. And she put out the sneak peek. So I just want to share the teaser for her documentary. Can I do that with y'all? Here's the teaser for Savvy Sab's documentary. I am so proud of her. She's doing the damn thing. Guys, she goes live in about 25 minutes. I want y'all to go into her chat and say JB sent me and congratulate her on her documentary. Let's take a look.
Yes, Boston is home to winning sports teams and elite universities. But some might say that there are two Bostons.
If you look at City Hall, no one's talking about that specific racial and historical component that Black people are the ones that are being removed.
There's a huge significant difference in lived experiences, and we know this because of the wealth report. We're at $8.
This whole plan of gentrification isn't a new concept. In every city you go into in the Northeast, they kept moving Black people out of the inner city. So it's a plan. It's been in place for a long time.
While the displacement isn't as bad as 1963, it hasn't gotten much better now.
It's by design that they've created spaces where we are no longer seen anymore. They're wiping us out one community at a time, and they're getting away with it. This is gentrification. Franklin Park has been a place where we have built community, and all these things are at risk.
Why is the mayor willing to throw herself on this sword, do or die, for this project? It's not about soccer. It's about the additional profits that can be made in this entertainment complex. It's a disrespect that you would take public parkland and then give it to a private group to control it. And this project is Emmett Till's mama pulling back a curtain. And if people don't look at what's behind that curtain, it's coming to them.
All right, guys, I am excited. This is going to be so good. So, guys, look, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be excited for Savvy Sab's documentary. I know as soon as it drops, I'll definitely be watching. So, guys, look, what do I always say? Water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Smoke them if you got them. Drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch something funny because joy is revolutionary. Read because reading is fundamental. I love you guys for watching. I want you guys to take care and have a beautiful day. Go grab something to eat now. Go ahead, y'all. All right. Mwah. Forehead kisses. Woo, I made the camera shake. All right, I'll see you guys later. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.